The longest stage of this 2015 Giro d'Italia. Today we head to Fiuggi, the spa town that often hosts these cycling finishes. We've seen it on Tirreno Adriatico on Giro d'Italia, here just 4 years ago for a Framventoso sprint win. Could be a sprint today, could be just about anything. So much drama, so much action to talk about. As always, it's all about the pink. Giro d'Italia, let's go to the finish.
Hello everybody and welcome to Giro Extra on Eurosport, coming to you just before our live coverage of Stage 7. We're in Fiuggi, where as you can see, Fiuggi's excited about today's stage, sir. Are you excited?
Well, you want me to speak English?
No, we were very happy with the way you look. Enjoy the day today, sir. So the stage is already underway, but we're going to start by thinking about the two big issues from yesterday's stage. Firstly, what everybody has been talking about, of course, is the crash that happened in the final 200 metres of the stage in the sprint finish. Daniele Colli from Nippo Vini Fantini crashed on that sprint stage and he fractured his arm in two places. He has been operated on and he is okay. He's going to be all right. But the main talking point, of course, was Alberto Contador, who dislocated his left shoulder twice, in fact. Contador has begun today's stage and he is going to try to continue for the rest of the stage. Juan Antonio Fletcher's here, of course, and Juan Antonio, we will talk more about the crash, but first a little bit about Andre Greipel, who won yesterday's stage, his 13th Grand Tour stage victory.
Yeah, 33 Grand Tour victories. I mean, he's a strong rider, he's a super fast sprinter, and as you can say, he's very muscle, and yesterday was perfect sprint for him, due to the speed especially. And that shows again how good he is winning stage, not just in other races, but especially in Grand Tours. He's winning. We just talked about that yesterday, about Greipel winning the Vuelta, winning the Giro, winning the Tour. He can win in any Grand Tour. He's a great rider, obviously.
He is a great rider. His third Giro d'Italia stage victory. Today's stage, though, is the longest of this year's Giro d'Italia. But we're going to talk more about that crash yesterday involving the pink jersey wearer Alberto Contador. Let's remind ourselves of how that story unfolded.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be...
Flat stage should have been a quiet and tranquil stage for Alberto Contador. In the end, it was mostly an easy day for the Giro d'Italia leader. First day in pink, surrounded by his teammates. The break came back, but then this happened. Daniele Colli taken out by a spectator's camera lens. He was injured, broke two bones in his arms. The ripple effect of the crash going across the road and bringing the pink jersey down on the left-hand side into the barriers. 4 or 5 riders going down, one of them the leader of the Giro d'Italia, and Contador in trouble. Andre Greipel then went on to take the stage win. A sprint and a raise of the arms for Lotto Soudal. A quick check that everything was okay for Alberto Contador. Back on his bike, and all seemed all right as he crossed the line. No discernible problem here. But just wait, 10 minutes later, podium protocol cleaned up, and suddenly he's in trouble. Alberto Contador, the leader of the Giro d'Italia, not even able to slip on the maglia rosa. Let's hear from Jacinto Virarte. Well, his manager said he's just crashed. We're not able to know how it will go for the next few hours, or of course for tomorrow. We just hope that he'll be fine this evening. Well, Alberto Contador quickly left the finish area and went to the X-ray truck behind the podium. Diagnosed with a dislocated left shoulder. X-rays did reveal that no bones, however, were broken. Optimistic. I'm optimistic. I'll try my best to stay here because I've worked a lot since last winter for this race. I want to stay here, and we'll see if tomorrow I can be part of it or not. certainly hope so I can. The Spaniard left the truck, his left arm, as you can see, heavily strapped as a precaution. How would the night go? This morning, early morning, Contador ready for action. Still in visible pain and looking after that left shoulder.
Alberto, how was the night?
Yeah, it was okay. Of course, very, very uncomfortable, but a little pain, but it's okay. For the rest, very short, because today is a very long stage.
Okay, confident?
I hope. I work incredible, very hard for in this race at 100%, and I will give and I will do everything that is possible for continuing this race.
Muchas gracias.
Off he went to the start. And today's stage, 264 kilometres. It's the longest of the race. Stage 8 on Saturday, though, another serious mountain test. After being chased to the start by the press of the Giro d'Italia, it was time to put on the pink. Even his rivals were inquiring how he was. How'll he get on? The afternoon will tell us the answer.
Well, we saw Fabio Aru and Alberto Contador on the starting line today, Juan Antonio. And cycling, one of the reasons we love this sport is there is still a code, an unwritten code of honour, especially towards the leader's jersey. How do you expect the peloton to react to Alberto's injury today?
Well, that's right. There's an unwritten code, there are many unwritten rules, and one of them is showing respect to the leader jersey at any situation. Always, for whatever happened in the bunch, and the fact that Alberto, he's a great champion and he's in pink and he's been injured yesterday, I really think that the bunch, the peloton, will show respect to Alberto, and they will try to ride as gentle as possible, showing a good etiquette from the bunch as well.
We also heard Alberto say that he's been working since last winter for this race, so I can understand why he wants to continue. What do you think of his decision?
Well, it's been obviously a major goal for him for this season for a long time, since last year probably, when after winning the Vuelta, having the race, so he decided to prepare for being ready at his best at the Giro d'Italia, and that's what he's showing so far. So yeah, he's not gonna throw the towel that easy. He's not gonna say, no, I'm not gonna start tomorrow. Of course, he's gonna at least to try. He's gonna do whatever is possible for him for being able to get through the day. Especially, I think, Alberto, you just need to start getting through the days. And today probably, we would talk about that before, but probably it's not the best day, but it's not bad. Not a bad day. Not too bad. Every cyclist, of course, has injuries. Alberto's had some very serious ones. We will remember, of course, last year at the Tour de France, him pulling out, but also back in 2004 in the Tour of Asturias was a very, very serious problem. That was a serious one. He actually crashed due to an aneurysma, and after that he got surgery. He was in coma for 3 weeks. So he nearly died. He could have been gone that day, and that really changed his personality. That made him. He actually said in Greg LeMond's interview before starting the Giro, he mentioned that. He mentioned how important for him was that injury, the way he got through that, and he fought to that, and he became a stronger rider, especially mentally, because he was able on going through certain situations that probably other riders just throw the towel, that just don't continue or don't go on. Well, Alberto Contador, of course, has continued today. As I said, he is racing today. And on the start line, Vincent Renaud, the Eurosport reporter, spoke to both the owner of Tinkoff Saxo, but first, the director sportif.
Here in Grosseto at the start of this stage with Lars Mikkelsen, sports director of Tinkoff Saxo. Lars, how is Alberto Contador this morning?
Yeah, he's actually quite optimistic. He had an okay night's sleep. And yeah, of course, he's in pain, but he's ready to continue.
How is the main problem for him on the bike?
Well, the problem is, of course, that his shoulder has been dislocated twice yesterday, and that he needs to keep the position of his shoulder in. But in cycling, fortunately, in this case, the position is good. So with the help of some strapping outside the skin, we hope that he'll be able to continue in a good way today.
And can you explain us what's happened yesterday on the finish line?
Well, okay, the crash was, so to speak, produced on the left side of the road, and if it's Daniele Colli's bikes or another rider's crashing, a bike is drifting from the left side to the right side, and Alberto hits this bike, and he tumbles over and land. Actually, it looked to me that he landed okay, but then another rider landed on top of him, and I think this is what happened and caused the problem with his shoulder.
Okay, thank you very much, and good luck for today. We are with Oleg Tinkov, the owner of the team Tinkoff Saxo. Oleg, how is the mood today in the team?
Yeah, obviously we are not upbeat because Alberto has crashed, and it's okay. We laugh a little bit in the bus. Alberto looks good. Of course, we will see how it goes. Now it's hard to predict, but this morning he was better than last night, and he starts. Of course, has pain, and his shoulder had a special bandage there, so he's concerned to get into the pocket and stuff. So we will see how it goes, but definitely mood is not at our best. We are in the pink, but the mood is not there. We'll see.
But you are more optimistic than yesterday.
Yeah, much more. Yesterday I was really worried because you never know before X-ray, before this MRI, what really happens, because rider just can tell you sensations, right? And today we know that nothing broken. All the ligaments and tendons are in there. It's much better today, but we will see how it goes in the race.
Thank you very much. Good luck for today.
So it's good news that Oleg Tinkov is very optimistic. I want to think more about the safety issues now that have been thrown up by this crash that happened yesterday. You may remember on a stage to Armentières in 1994 on the Tour de France, a policeman took a photograph of the sprint and caused a crash. Well, yesterday it was a member of the public with a very long camera lens that actually hit Daniele Colli of Nippo Vini Fantini. As I said, he is okay after operations this morning. But really, Juan Antonio, as we discussed yesterday, something needs to be done to make these narrow bunch sprints safer, both for spectators but mostly for the riders.
Exactly, Ashley. There's a lot of concern. Riders are among the riders. They're worried about safety in many different situations of the race, and bunch sprints is one of them. Especially when coming to stages where the barriers are perpendicular. We discussed it, as you said yesterday, and perpendicular to the floor, to the ground. So that allows spectators to go over the fences, to bring the cameras to arms, many things, and that's dangerous. That's when the bunch is riding at 70 km an hour, that can cause crashes as yesterday, and solutions where there could be a lot of solutions. They are a little bit brainstorming with that.
Yeah, indeed. Well, Michael Rogers, one of Alberto's teammates, tweeted last night and suggesting that there should be double barriers to keep the public further back. The other options, of course, are taller barriers, or as you mentioned yesterday on the Tour de France, we have angled barriers.
Exactly. I mean, Mick Rogers' idea is great. I mean, having double barriers, but I don't know if it's the best solution. The good thing about that is to come out with new ideas, brainstorming from the riders, what they think, what's best. I pointed out the angle barriers from Tour de France are probably, in my opinion, the best barriers because there's nothing, it's just the barrier angle. So even if you crash against the barrier, you're still fine, but not with these barriers here in the Giro d'Italia and many other races. So UCI or someone should rule also. That could be a good thing, that if they rule how the barriers has to be, and especially find the best way to avoid situations as we saw yesterday.
The fans, of course, wouldn't enjoy two barriers, but one other suggestion that's been made is that the time is stopped at the 3 kilometre mark. The sprint still takes place, but then if there are GC contenders in the peloton, of course, they wouldn't be caught up in that. And the UCI, the grand jury, does have the ability to do that, and there has been a precedent too.
yeah, they do have the ability to do it and the right to do it. And they've done it in the past, especially in 2005, as I remember in the Tour de France, when it was raining in the Champs-Élysées. It was way too dangerous especially for the GC guys. So they say, well, they decided the time is going to be taken as soon as we hit enter with the circuit. So in those situations, it's easy for the jury to apply that rule and to say, well, let's do it safer, let's make it safer. But sometimes, even yesterday, there was no issues. I mean, it was perfect, no danger roundabout. It was totally safe finish. So you can't tell the jury to take that decision, because sometimes can not be as sportive. Maybe even in the last 3 cases, things can happen sporting-wise, not due to safety or too dangerous. So where is the line? Where is the point? When do it or not? I think we will stay discussing that long time.
And I'm sure that discussion will continue. Let's move our attentions now, though, to today's stage and potentially some good news for Alberto Contador. Fuji here, where the finish is of today's stage, is famed for its healing waters. So you never know. If Alberto believes in those sorts of things, it could be a good sign. But let's see what happens in the stage before they get to the finish line.
Stage 7, 264 kilometres. It's monument less. Only a kilometre less than the Tour de Flanders this year. One climb in the middle, just a 4th category climb, 2 intermediate sprints, 2 feed zones as well, but a complicated finale inside the last 30 kilometres up to Fuji.
Well, the riders, of course, are well underway on this longest stage of this year's Giro. There's a break, and they're 8 minutes in front after 140 kilometres. And, of course, the live coverage here on Eurosport will follow us. But, Juan Antonio, you rode the last 20K or so this morning. Tell us about what it's like coming into this finish.
I rode back with a proper bike, sorry. You have to mention that. You took a rental bike.
It was the only one left. Anyway,
you did it. Great. Well done. Well, going back to the stage, it's a hard day. It's rolling, wind. This morning was an issue. It was blowing very hard. So it's mainly rolling, and onto those 20 last kilometers, narrow and rolling roads until they hit the last 11 kilometers when they enter into a wider road, and from there start dragging up until the finish line. It's quite hard, not risky. There's no danger except from a long tunnel, but it's all right. I think it's going to be a hard and tough final. Sprinters, I'm afraid no. Some fast guys, but riders that are capable of climbing.
So more a stage for punchers and stage runners, things like that?
Exactly, Ashley. Punchers. Do you want me to name one guy?
No, we'll keep that for the end. Before we do, though, let's hear from Henrik Hausler, riding for I Am Cycling. He's going to give us his tip, actually. But first of all, he talks about recovery from crashes. Of course, it's a key topic at the moment.
With Heinrich Hausler, the team I Am Cycling. Heinrich, how are you? You crashed many times still the start.
Yeah, no, I'm getting better day by day. Just the baddest part, having crashed at the start of the race is not the best way to recover every day. Just sleeping is the worst, actually. But it's getting better day by day. We've been lucky with the weather. It's been warm, not raining. And today's going to be a long stage. Headwind, it could be a long day, but we're going to go for it, go for the sprint today. So
your team will rewrite for avoid breakaways, no?
Yeah, but the problem is, on this kind of finish today, for me, there's not that many teams that will control. Maybe only BMC with Gilbert, Green Edge, maybe with Michael Matthews. But I think for the pure sprinters, it's maybe a little bit too hard. And if 8-9 guys go up the road, I don't think there's many teams that are going to say, oh, we're going to ride 260 Ks on the front today. So you're just going to have to see. Also, if the big teams send guys up the road, then we're also going to try and put someone in the break.
Okay, thank you very much. Good luck. Thanks.
Very interesting to hear Hausler talk about the long stage and too long for the sprint teams to control. Is that how you see it?
Well, Henrik Hausler is quite experienced to say, so we need to give the credit to him. we need to trust what he's saying. And actually, it's a long stage. It's going to be very hard for the sprinters to control, but someone has to control the race. The race is going to be controlled. That's already a breakaway. They are trying to keep the breakaway around the 8 minutes, so the breakaway is not going over 10, 12 minutes, which will make it more uncontrollable. So I really think it's going to be a bunch sprint today. Small group, not a big group sprint, sorry. It's going to be a small, I would say around 80 riders making it to the finish line and sprinting for the victory.
Okay, well, Henrik has gone for Michael Matthews, of course, who wore the pink jersey earlier on in this Giro. Juan Antonio Fletcher, who are you going to go for?
We've been naming big names, big teams. So today I'm going to go to a name from a rider from a smaller team. I want to go to Oscar Gatto.
Okay.
Oscar Gatto is a puncher. He's Italian. He's in a small team. We haven't seen him much, but I know that guy can really be in the mix today. So I'm saying, pointing on him for the victory.
Great. Thank you very much indeed, Juan Antonio. We'll see you, of course, after today's live coverage. Here in Fuji, the world of cycling is excited to see. In fact, if you look slightly up the road over there, you can see there's a gentleman who is shouting for Stefano Pirazzi, because this is where Pirazzi is from. And that's what the locals would like to see as the result today. Great fun here in Fuji. Big race, of course, still going on right now. Let's throw you straight to our commentators and to especially the pictures of the sign-on this morning. See you later.
See you.
Nothing more nailed on than a Stefano Pirazzi attack into Fuji today. We can almost guarantee that. What we can't guarantee is what will happen to Alberto Contador today and throughout this race. It's going to be intriguing viewing. Great that he's fit enough to start the race. Great that he's able to pedal through the pain. A testament to the character of a man who's had to suffer and suffer and suffer through many an injury and a crash over the last few years. It's a calm day on the side of the road. A calm day too out there in the peloton at the minute. It's the longest stage of this Giro d'Italia. Monument length, and so much to talk about during the length of this mini monument today. A hilly finish into Fuji. Be sure to join Matt Stevens and me, Rob Hatch, after the break. It's stage 7 of this 2015 Giro d'Italia. Start of stage 7 of this Giro d'Italia, all the way from Grosseto, very close to where the incident-packed stage 6 finished yesterday. Alberto Contador and Daniele Colli, pardon me, the worst of those. Daniele Colli did not start the stage. A fracture of both the humerus and the radius, both operated on this morning. The news is good from the hospital. The man who's had already to suffer so much throughout his career for Nippo Vini Fantini. Remember, he almost lost his leg while suffering from cancer a few years back. He is going to be okay and hopefully be back on his bike very soon. Alberto Contador on his bike and riding. More about that as the afternoon goes on. There are 114.7 kilometres to go as Marco Bandiera is going to go out to try and take the first intermediate sprint of the day. Intermediate sprint at the Autodromo di Vallelunga. The Vallelunga circuit. He's going to take the points, and he's also in a very good standing for the Fuga Pinarello prize. He was out in the breakaway 24 hours ago. Fuga Pinarello prize is the prize for the most kilometres spent out there in the breakaway. We'll talk about that, Alberto Contador's safety, and who we think is going to go on and take the win all throughout the afternoon. It's a pleasure to have Matt Stevens alongside me again. Matt, well, overnight, so much to digest, so much about this man. How do you think he slept?
Well, we saw the interview this morning as he was walking to the team car. He looked a little bit pensive. He's riding into the unknown to a certain degree, but just looking at him there and looking at a couple of the still images we had earlier on that I saw on social media where he was riding out of the saddle, that indicates that, yeah, clearly he's going to be in a little bit of pain. Thankfully, today's stage, although gently rolling, a few little conks near the end, he can rest hopefully and recuperate as well as possible. There's his main rival, Fabio Aru, who shook his hand on the start line.
It was nice to see the concern, wasn't it, this morning?
It was. I mean, and Aru, of course, he wants to wear that pink jersey at some point in the race. He wants to try and defeat Alberto, but he wants to do it fairly. And cycling is a very, very dangerous sport. You come off sometimes and you crash. But when you think about the way the accident unfolded, it's a thing that shouldn't have happened, and we can maybe talk about the safety aspect and how unprecedented it was yesterday. But no, I think Alberto's going to be, he's got his team on the front trying to control things at the moment, so they can set the rhythm of the day, as we see Bandiera taking the sprint here. But no, it's uncharted territory, but you know, Alberto Contador, what a resilient character he is. He tried to press on last year during the Tour de France when he had a minor fracture of the leg, then went on to win the Vuelta a España, of course. So I think he'll be glad that we're not going up any major climbs today.
Breakaway today includes Pierpaolo De Negri there of Nippo Vini Fantini. There is the Autodromo, the circuit that we've just had the intermediate sprint on. Motorsport is huge in Italy, a lot of circuits around. We're going to have a stage finish on one later on, Imola. Later on in the race when we go back up the north. We're heading south today. This is the first cloudy day of this Giro d'Italia as well, and it's taken a week for us to have not quite inclement weather, but not blazing sunshine and late 20s degrees. It's over 20 degrees, so it's still warm enough to ride your bike today. It's pretty good weather. And as you can see, we're in rolling countryside. It's a transition stage today, all the way from Grosseto to Fiuggi. On the outskirts of Rome, we're missing out the Caput Mundi, the capital of the world. And there you go. Happy birthday to his dad from Marco Bandiera.
He's kept that very neat in his back pocket. I wonder if he went back to the team car to get that one. That's
and he's obviously not
like
been very well. It's telling him to get well soon as well. So get well soon, Signor Bandiera. That's nice to see. And nice to see Marco Bandiera and Androni in the break again. They're joined, as we said, by Pierpaolo De Negri, Nicola Bohem of Bardiani CSF. And Bardiani have a really important day today because one of their sponsors is Fiuggi, the mineral water, which comes from the spa town that we're headed to. So a man who's riding for them also comes from the spa town that we're heading to, Stefano Pirazzi. He will no doubt attack at some point. They will have big plans for this stage, perhaps with the likes of Colbrelli and Battaglin, given the fact that the finale today is a little bit uphill, it's a little bit complicated, and of course it's such a long stage. The fourth man in the break is Nikolai Mikhailov, the Bulgarian champion, as we get a quick look at Alan Marangoni, the man who was in the break just 24 hours ago. Says hello to all of those watching at home. They're up against a headwind as well today, Matt. It was always going to be a long day anyway, 7 hours plus on the bike. It might get up to 8 hours today.
Yeah, when you have a stage, again, like you say, this is what's known, you know, for want of a better word, as a transitional stage, a day for the breakaways. On one hand, it can be a very long day because the average speed's quite low, as you can see here, 33.862 as compared to 42.8, I think it was yesterday, so a massive difference in the tempo and speed. On the one hand, it's good because the speed's low, you're producing this energy, and look, it's almost like a club run as Chavez is having a chat there with Betancourt and the other Colombian there, Rigoberto, a little Colombian forum there. But as you can see, far more relaxed atmosphere in the peloton than we saw in the first few stages, where it's tense and very, very nervous. But okay, the pace is not as hard in the front, or not as hard in the peloton. It's a bit harder when you're riding on the front in the wind, but the payoff is the fact you're going to spend longer in the office and longer in the saddle.
Bandiera, Mikhailov, Bohem and De Negri. 3 Italians and a Bulgarian out there in the break today. All the teams represented are from the second division professional continental level. Have a big gap at the minute as well. It's been touching 10 minutes in the last few kilometres. 112.9 to go. A lot can happen today. They're on the part of the stage that is now ever so slightly descending, pardon me, to the second feed zone of the day. After that, we'll descend into the base of what is the only categorised climb of the day. You can see that advantage now gone up to 11 minutes and 12 seconds. The only categorised climb of the day is a 4th category climb, just 3 points available for the blue jersey. Not too many problems for Jan Polans at the minute to try and keep that. And we're through the hills just to the east of Rome, heading into Frosinone, the province of Frosinone, which is the home to Fiuggi. So we left Tuscany all the way down towards Lazio. Lazio, the region that holds the capital, Rome. Of course, so much history in this part of the world. Every little town and village has had its bit to play in the empires and the different people who've ruled this little peninsula. Sticks out into the Mediterranean Sea.
Fondly enough, I think back in my geography days at school, we used to call it the giant boot. I think that's how we learned the shape, the topography, the particular topography of Italy. Take a look at your atlases, or Google Maps, whatever you look at these days.
The Italians call it by the same as well. Lo stivale is the boot. One of the first words I think I ever learned in Italian class as well. Campagnano di Roma. Little village on the hill there. Terracotta coloured tiles and blending in beautifully with the forests.
Love the way they're randomly spread over the hillside as well. There's no real order to the houses, especially, I mean, you know, as I always say, building houses on this sort of terrain must provide its own challenges, but what you end up with is the most beautiful spectacle.
Back to the racing. Alberto Contador at the front today, having a little bit of help from BMC, who have options to win this stage today. They'll be looking at the likes of Philippe Gilbert, maybe even Stefan Kung to have a go towards the end. The Maglia Rosa, though, let's talk about him. Alberto Contador, he was diagnosed with a dislocated shoulder yesterday evening after he had the x-ray. We saw that on the podium he was struggling to put that left arm of his, which is the arm that is affected. You'll see that whenever he's been in conversation with people, it's the right arm he's moved off the bars. He doesn't want to go back to the cars too much himself. He wants help from his teammates. He's a little scared, actually, of raising the arm, he was telling the Spanish press this morning, because he's scared that it will slip out again. Now, I'm no medical expert, I'm no doctor, but a dislocated shoulder, Matt, sounds like a pretty serious thing to me.
Yeah, well, there's a big bundle of nerves in there as well. It can be quite painful. I think that the big issue for Alberto, as you said, is it slipping out again. Obviously, the force of the crash itself, and when I've looked at the replays, and Eurosport played at the top of the show the slow motion replay of Alberto's crash. Fortunately, he was able to shave off quite a lot of speed before the impact, but the flip side of shaving off speed is, although you crash at a slower rate, what you do in terms of impact when you do fall on the ground, the impact is distributed. Well, it isn't distributed as far. When you crash at high speed, if you're fortunate not to hit an immovable object, you tend to slide and the impact is dissipated. But when you have the full force of your body weight on one area, that's when you get broken collarbones, broken wrists, etc. And the force was enough to dislocate the arm. But immediately Alberto managed to put the arm back in, but again it went on the podium again, and he's been very protective of it this morning.
Tutti pazzi per Pirazzi. We're all crazy for Pirazzi is the message. His fan club ready at the finish, his family will there, his friends will be there. He managed to get his stage win last season, did Stefano Pirazzi, for Bardiani. He's from Fuji, and we'll see him attack at some point in the race. BMC helping out Tinkoff Saxo with the chase at the minute as the gap goes up to 11 and 12. 11 minutes, 12 seconds for a four-man break. We're off for our first commercial break. We'll see you after this on the Giro d'Italia. Just had the intermediate sprint cleaned up by the break behind. 5th, 6th and 7th were available. Nizzolo came 5th, Modolo 6th and Viviani in 3rd place there. Minneke came 7th. Matt, that means I think now he's level on points in the points red jersey competition with Andre Greipel.
It does indeed. For this is a Category B stage, so the points on offer at the hotspots for the Maglia Rosa, the red jersey, 2012 86432. Viviani got 2 there, so that brings him level on points, as you say, with Andre Greipel, who's currently ensconced in the red jersey. But interestingly, reading one of the interviews that Andre Greipel gave, I think it was yesterday, was he's on the hunt for stages, not necessarily defending the red jersey, so that's why we didn't see him contest that one. But clearly Viviani really wants that jersey and has put himself in a very good position by sprinting for those points.
Well, as that graphic showed, it's a very happy birthday today to Tom Stamschneider, wearing number 169, born in Almelo in the Netherlands. 30th birthday today. Been a pro since 2004, considered a classics breakaway specialist. He's from great cycling stock, by the way. His father, Henny Stamschneider, was a former world cyclocross champion. He won the world championship, the rainbow jersey, in 1981. His dad, before he was a cyclist, was a footballer as well. Turned to cycling after an injury. Talking of injuries, Alberto Contador, just look at that left hand, little closer to the centre of the bars there, Matt, trying to perhaps just keep it stable.
Yeah, that does indicate he's suffering from, I mean, normally a rider has their hands, I mean, riders all sit in different positions, but depending on the way they are on a bike, but generally speaking, there'll be, a almost perfect symmetry in relation to looking at a rider frontally, so the hands will be either on the hoods, right in the centre of the bars, or midway through the bars. And Alberto had his left hand Of course, the dislocation was on the left-hand side, nearer the stem, just by his SRM power meter monitor there. So, yeah, that suggests that it's clearly more comfortable in that position rather than further out. And with that interesting little interview, didn't we, with Oleg Tinkov before the start, and he said that Alberto is more worried about reaching into his back pocket to get things out. So, no doubt he'll have his gels and his food on the right-hand side, and it may be that he actually had his teammates, because if he has to use his right hand to get into the pocket, that means there's going to be extra stress on his left hand. So it may be that he has to have a teammate to take the food out of his pockets. It'll be quite interesting to see what happens, because this is the sort of stage where you need to eat quite a lot.
Alberto Contador this morning before the start gave a special interview to the Spanish sports paper AS, and he was saying that he hopes it doesn't rain today. I tell you what, we've had the first clouds of this Giro d'Italia. There's a forecast for a possibility, I'm just going to say a possibility of rain later on. They aren't saying it will rain in Fuji at the finish, but it is forecast to get a little more cloudy as the afternoon goes on, and there could be a spot or two of rain towards the end. He's worried because he doesn't want to have to reach around to try and get a rain jacket on, and it's simple things such as that. Okay, if he can ride in the peloton, as you say, try and keep those elbows and, more importantly, the shoulder as still as possible throughout the day. We're riding more or less in a straight line, north to south, down the west coast of Italy today. And he'll be hoping that he can just keep it calm, not move it too much. It's that fear that it's going to slide out of place again, the joint. Simple things that you wouldn't even think about. Putting on a rain jacket, grabbing food, they are the things that could endanger his Giro d'Italia.
They're the things as a professional bike rider that you, as you say, Rob, you know, they're innate. They're things ordinarily you don't even think about. It's like when you've been driving a car for years and then you suddenly deconstruct what you actually do, and it's actually quite complicated. A procedure. You do a lot of things. You rely on a lot of degree of mobility that ordinarily you wouldn't think about. And now, you know, the focus is now. I mean, clearly he's in pain, and it's not so much the pain that he will be allowed a certain degree of pain relief. I don't even know exactly what he'll be having, but generally they're only allowed things like paracetamol, etc. But he's going to want to keep it as immobile as possible, and riding a bike's difficult. And thankfully for Alberto, the course isn't overly difficult. It's gently undulating. With that headwind, the pace will be lessened. And when you sit on a wheel, actually the sort of effort that you'll need to put out wouldn't be as hard as, say, a crosswind or even a tailwind. It's far less stressful. Yeah, difficult for the guys riding in front, especially for La Fuga here, the breakaway. But it's going to be a difficult day for him. It's hopefully a day that he doesn't put it under too much strain. But he's got his hands back on the hoods there, and even things like changing gear and braking, and you know, with the continental way of braking, Alberto's front brake will be on the left-hand side, and that's the brake that a rider would generally use slightly more than the back brake. You should always brake equally, but generally it's the front brake that you'll feather a little bit more than the back. And so it'll be interesting to see how much torque and how much pressure and how much stress actually braking will affect Alberto as well, as he puts his hand back in the middle of the bars again.
Pierpaolo De Negri. Not a good night for Vini Fantini last night. Of course, all the talk is about Alberto Contador today because he is the race leader. He's the man for a lot of people who makes the race. But as we look at Pierpaolo De Negri here and his vital statistics, he's, of course, an Italian riding for Nippo Vini Fantini. 2 wins last year in 2014. He's had a win over the last couple of years of his career. 28 years of age now. He likes motorcycling, and he's a big Valentino Rossi supporter. Enjoys scuba diving in summer. A big Goodfellas watcher, and you can see, we were talking about music yesterday. Listen to Bruce Springsteen.
The boss.
Can he be the boss from this breakaway today? But in Nippo Vini Fantini colours last night, it would have been an enjoyable night. And a man who's suffered more than most on the bike, Daniele Colli. He's won 3 bike races in his career. His biggest win has been in the Tour of Austria a couple of years back now. Daniele Colli suffered very much early on in his career when he had cancer. He almost lost the use of his leg, and last night with that double break of both the humerus and the radius, it wasn't a good night for him. As we look at Marco Bandiera, now 30, big Alessandro Del Piero, former Juventus player fan. Not a great night for Nippo Vini Fantini though.
No, yeah, I mean, I wasn't fully appraised of Daniele Colli's past. I wasn't aware, and when we delved a little bit deeper, it's sort of it was even more cruel. I mean, it was such a freak accident yesterday, something that it's very difficult to legislate for. I I mean, we talked about barriers, etc. Maybe we'll dwell on that subject in a few moments. But for Daniele Colli, it's going to mean a double break. We saw some quite awful pictures, and there's quite a lot of stills on the internet. Very, very nasty break indeed. But yeah, what misfortune.
Nicola Bohem riding for Bardiani, big football fan. Samuel Eto'o, former Inter striker, his favourite footballer. Enjoys listening to rap as well. A 25-year-old from the northeast of Italy. Very much of a niche name as well, that. Nicola Bohem.
It's actually Rick Zabel at the front at the moment, the young German. His father, of course, 4 or 5 times winner of Milan-San Remo.
Yeah, didn't ever win a stage on the Giro d'Italia, surprisingly, though. And interesting that Andre Greipel, stage winner yesterday, actually equalled Robert Fuster, who spends a lot of his time racing in North America now, on 3 stage wins for German riders at the Giro. Only Rudi Altig has more, with just 4 stage wins. So the Germans historically not winning too many stages at the Giro.
No, it's an odd one, that, especially Eric Zabel, because he was prolific in his pomp, wasn't he? You know, he was almost winning at will, but never at the Giro, which Andre Greipel has won, of course, in every Grand Tour. But yeah, interesting that his dad didn't win on there. But good to see Rick at the front. He is a sprinter. He's got a lot of promise, but clearly today, in terms of the parkour, it's about being. I mean, straight away we know. I mean, I think one of my favourites for today is Philippe Gilbert. That the finish of today's race will suit him down to the ground. There'll be other riders who will help him nearer the finish, but for the moment, it's just Rick Zabel assisting Tinkoff Saxo, which they'll be very happy with. We're just setting a pace so this break doesn't get too far away. Although it's up at around 10 or 11 minutes, given the block headwind that the riders are moving into, it means it's kind of advantage peloton in these sorts of situations. A cross tailwind can actually sometimes swing in the favour, especially in the latter stages for the breakaway, but with a block headwind it's relentlessly difficult all day long.
And just 4 riders from the 2nd division of professional cycling as well, not invited to all the top World Tour races, not always racing at this level. We're talking guys racing in an on a stage that is the same distance or even longer than most monuments. We're talking 900 metres less in length than the mighty Tour of Flanders, this race. And to have a stage so long in a Grand Tour, it's something that often the organisers have to get special dispensation for. These guys in a breakaway, it's a long time to be out in front.
Yeah, it's you know, even if you're just not racing and just riding your bike for that long, that's a long day in the saddle. And as you say, 4 riders. You know, let's work that out. It's yeah, you divide 264 into 4. That's 70 odd kilometres on the front each. You know, and they, although saying that, it took about 20 kilometres for the break to go. There was quite a few attacks early on, but yeah, that's a long way in front. Again, ideally, if you were to ask for the thoughts, if we were to get a microphone, a roving reporter, and chat to the guys in the breakaway, I think they'd be perhaps wanting 1 or 2 more riders, maybe perhaps 7 or 8, to give you an optimum amount. That's the kind of number where you don't get many people sitting on, but it just gives you a bit more of a break before you hit the front again.
Vasil Kirienko of Team Sky and Belarus. Quite a few riders going back towards the cars as well at this point. Race heading up and down. Nothing too taxing though in the middle of today's stage. It's all about the distance really. And a few guys feeling the last few days in the legs. Just 2.5 stages to go into the rest day, guys. Come on.
Big shake out of the muscles there. Opportunity to have a bit of a stretch. You see often riders shaking their quads.
First time we've seen it, Alberto Contador out of the saddle and onto the pedals. That is his climbing style. We'll talk more about it. It's going to affect him maybe over the next couple of days when we come back after this quick commercial break. Rick Zabel at the front as we head down towards Frosinone province today. Started in the very south of Tuscany, in Grosseto, heading towards Tuscany and the Maremma, skirting around Rome, not touching the capital this year. And he seems to go once in a blue moon now to Rome. Remember, 2009 finish outside the Colosseum to celebrate the Giro del Centenario, or the Centenario, pardon me, or the Centenary Giro. It's the 98th Giro this year as we go through Morlupo. And of course all the talk overnight has been about Alberto Contador's shoulder, his dislocated shoulder. We were talking before the break about the medication. I know that you had a crash, you said, in the 2000 Giro, and the medication that was allowed then, very different to the medication that is allowed now, and they've really cracked down on it, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of talk. We won't dwell on that particular subject, but there's a lot of talk about the exemption certificates. You know, the therapeutic TUEs, as they're commonly known. But there was nothing like that back when I was riding. But I crashed on day 2, had quite a nasty some ligament damage to both my knees. Managed to ride through, but the pain got increasingly worse, and it was at that particular time where we're thinking, should I pull the pin on the Giro? Eventually I had to, but there was a few stages the key stages they wanted me to try and get through, and I was in agreement. So it was the race doctor. I had 2 cortisone injections, one in each, right deep into each knee, and woke up the following day and it felt like I had new knees. Really well. I didn't feel any pain. I wasn't exactly romping up the mountains, but I was climbing in better groups. I was at that time climbing with Pantani in a couple of groups, and it was like, whoa, But then, on day 3, they said that we can give you no more. You're on your own. Once it had ebbed away, I was in excruciating pain. Then you think, well, okay, steroids only mask, the pain, and there was clearly some damage going on. And I only rode, I think it was up to stage 17 that I actually had to quit the race because I was doing myself even more damage. This is a different situation here, but as far as I'm aware, he won't be allowed any corticosteroid injections, so he'll just be painkillers and strapping and anything therapeutic, some gentle massage and manipulation, for example. But yeah, things have dramatically changed.
Mikhailov just getting back on in the breakaways. The gap goes down to 9 minutes and 50. There are a lot of different polarised opinions of Alberto Contador. We've had lots of tweets from either side of the spectrum this week. Of course, a few people focusing on that incident back in 2010 at the Tour de France, the clenbuterol and the stake and what have you. Again, some people in favour of second chances, other people not. Understand both points of view. However, whatever you think of Alberto Contador, you really have to agree he's as hard as nails, isn't he? He rode last year at the Tour de France on for about 45 minutes with a broken leg. He recovered very quickly and very well, still a little hurt, won the Vuelta a España, and what a fantastic Vuelta a España that was, with Chris Froome and Fabio Aru and all the rest. It was a superb race, the best Grand Tour we saw last year, I think, without a doubt, on our screens here on the home of cycling. But I think, yeah, Alberto Contador deserves kudos. There were some naughty suggestions last night that, he's going to be forced to ride by Mr. Tinkoff, Oleg will do it, but no. Athlete's health come first, and of course surely the final decision will rest with Alberto Contador, and what a courageous decision it has been. He deserves a lot of credit for riding on.
Yeah, I think what Alberto, being as high profile a rider as he is basically just an example generally of how professional cyclists are. You have to be hardy. It's a very, very difficult sport involving from time to time crashing. That is part of it. Yes, his crash in particular was very unusual, but it does involve falling off, and you have to show remarkable fortitude, resilience. Your body has to be able to cope with those situations, but more importantly, it's the psychological strength that the pro cyclists have, and particularly Alberto Contador. And when you look at what he's done, he's at the latter stages of his career. He signed another couple of years. Well, he's going to ride on till the end of next year, 2016. He's signed a contract to stay with Tinkoff Saxo. He's going for the double this year, and he has prepared a lot. He went through an ordeal last year, wants to win the Tour de France, wants to win the Giro, and there's not going to be many opportunities for him to do that. When you look at his results and the way he rode last year and the way he's riding at the moment, although he's had a steadier start to the year, but that's for good reason, because he wants to continue his form through. He is the best he's kind of ever been, and he doesn't want to throw it all away. If he can see a chance to continue, he will, but also he'll have his mind on the Tour and perhaps even the Vuelta. Who knows? If he has to pull out of this, then he'll have to sort of reassess his objectives, and perhaps, I'm speculating now, of course, I think we all hope as fans of pro cycling, that he continues for the good of cycling and for the good of the Giro, really. But ultimately, if it becomes too bad, he will have to pull out, because if he rides through and causes further damage, the whole season could be ruined.
Tomorrow we've got a mountain stage. His style is very much to get out of the pedal. It's a wonderful style to watch. Again, whatever you think of him, he's so elegant on a bike, out on the pedals, dancing away. However, with that style comes a movement of the bars, rocking from side to side. That's going to take a toll on its shoulder if the racing is really on tomorrow, and he's going to have to make a decision as well, whether to follow, try and limit any damage, or whether he's going to try and bluff it, go really through the pain barrier and try and stay with anybody else.
Yeah, I mean, Alberto is well known for riding out of the saddle. It's his style, it's his preferred methodology. It actually goes against, I mean, obviously, as we all know, when riders want to put the power down and accelerate, that they do that out of the saddle on a climb when they attack and when they sprint. But generally speaking, they then, on a climb, will settle down and use a lower gear and pedal. And I think the riders of late who exemplify the high cadence, an interesting Fabio Aru has increased his cadence this year by another 2 or 3 revs per minute. But Contador doesn't sit down and twiddle a gear. I mean, you might see earlier on in the stage, when the camera's not necessarily dwelling on him sat down, but when he needs to accelerate and when he needs to try and break the elastic and then continue on to increase his lead, his preferred method and how he trains is riding out of the saddle, levering the gear around, using that sort of strength. Yeah, I would imagine that's going to be pretty difficult. So thankfully for him, there's not going to be a lot of that today, but tomorrow is going to be a real test. We have a proper mountaintop finish, a first category climb, and I think if he gets through today, the real litmus test of whether we'll see Alberto Contador continue through the 98th edition of the Giro will be tomorrow.
Into the hills, front of the race of De Negri, Bandiera, Bohem and Mikhailov. Italy represented with 3 riders there. That is Bandiera at the back, and of course we mentioned the Fuga Pinarello prize. It's the prize for the most kilometres spent out in the front in the breakaway, and Marco Bandiera had 149 after today, after he was out yesterday in the break. That put him 9th on the list that had been led by Marek Rutkiewicz earlier on this week. Today's breakaway is going to put Marco Bandiera right at the top of the list, and for those teams and those riders who make their name getting in and out of the breakaway, it's a big price, isn't it, towards the end of a 3-week race? Certainly if you come from an Italian professional continental team. Yeah,
I mean, there's no jersey on offer, but there is a not unsubstantial financial reward at the end of the race, and the prestige. You'll get to visit the podium. Yeah, it's very, very important for the smaller teams. I mean, it was a hard day yesterday out in front, and fair play, especially on the back of the unfortunate Daniele Colli incident. To see him get out back in the mix and in a breakaway is it's testament to somebody who really wants, who's being professional. A lot of these riders in the smaller teams know their limitations. Bear in mind, although they are riding in their own Grand Tour, they want to really excel. This is the pinnacle of their season, and they want to show. But they know within that, okay, look, I'm not maybe a stage winner's out of the question, but hey, I can be a protagonist. I can get out there and mix it, enjoy it, and become inspired. And when you get regularly into the breakaways, it gives a great deal of momentum to the rest of the team and morale as well. So it's good to see. But yeah, there are prizes on offer that are of great value to teams on that level.
Lozziting back at the back on the left-hand side in the red jersey there for Lotto Soudal. Winners yesterday with Andre Greipel. Very, very difficult task for Andre Greipel to repeat it today with the length of the stage, the distance, and how active the finale is going to be. BMC obviously want things, as Contador is looking comfortable there.
Yeah, he's not looking too bad there, really. I mean, not, really savagely swinging the bike from side to side, but he's out the saddle. He's not looking like he's too much in pain.
Trek Factory Racing about to commit a man to the chase, as well as Marcus Burkhardt is going to come up to the front. Either to have a chat with Rick Zabel, add his work as well. And, of course, perhaps even have a little tactical chat too. One of the most important men, Marcus Burkhardt, at the front. Interesting, I heard from Cheng Ji at the start today. He was saying that probably he wasn't going to be the man used to do a lot of the work today. He said that it was more an opportunist stage. It wasn't one that Luka Mezgec certainly had in mind, unless he was bluffing. As we see Lars Yitting back again, a few other riders stretching out. It's a long, long day in the saddle.
There's a bit of it looks like a little yoga class, calisthenics class going on at the back. But no, these long days in the saddle, especially when the pace is lower. Okay, it's nice sometimes to not press too hard on the pedals, but that's when you start to notice the other sort of general aches and pains. Bearing in mind, these riders today are going to be in the saddle for over 7 hours. It's a long day to sit on a bicycle, even for these guys. Sometimes, bizarrely, it's easier to race because you don't think about the other aches and pains. You're just thinking about your legs, about your breathing. But on these days, especially given we've had such a hard tour, all the other aches and pains will start to get out. Shake of the legs, bit of a stretch of the back, all very, very important.
Xu Gang there, the domestic from China, riding for Lampre Merida. Born in 1984, he's been around for a while, but that beat wasn't staying in his hands. 31 now. Big favourite. Linar, the tennis player, that's his sporting hero. But of course his favourite sport is cycling, and he's living the dream out there at the minute in the peloton at the Giro d'Italia. Stage 7 today, on our way to Fiuggi. Big, long day. Second feed zone already gone through for the peloton. Bandiera, Bohem, Mihailov and Denegre out there in front. There's the Bulgarian champion in the orange jersey for CCC, Sprandi Polkovic, the Polish team. All the rest are Italians riding for Italian teams. Had your lunch yet, Matt?
Yeah, had a nice ham sandwich with cheese and tomato, thank you very much.
So I can carry on the next section without making you hungry?
With a nice, yeah, bit of just light mustard in there as well. Oh. So I think I'm ready for the final part of the stage.
Are you?
Yeah.
You've had your finish bottle ready. Well, the riders are. They've just been through the second feed zone today. It's such a long stage that you can see the musettes, the little bags that carry the food on the backs of the riders. 2 feed zones to get in the 264 mammoth kilometres of this Giro stage. It's by no means the longest ever Giro stage. Back in the early days of the Giro, as we see some of the protagonists who could be in the mix today, they had sort of 400-kilometre long stages. The longest ever stage was 430 kilometres from Lucca to Rome, 1914. May the 28th, 1914. Constante Girardengo won. 17 hours and 28 minutes was his time. We're talking 7 to 8 hours here, and that's a long time for nowadays.
Well, back in those days, in the Tour de France as well, they really were. It really was the Giro d'Italia and the Tour de France. There was no transfers. They rode round the whole country. Primarily, the Tour really was a boucle, wasn't it? It was just essentially around the edge of the country with no transfers. So the stages were ridiculous, basically. But some cracking stories about the history of the Giro and the Tour.
On that particular day, 28th of May 1914, Girardengo winning, of course, almost 17.5 hours. The breakaway was made by Lauro Bordin, who got away at a level crossing. We've heard all that about this season back to Paris-Roubaix as well. He stayed out for a staggering 350 kilometres. Can you imagine that?
No.
And unsurprisingly, in a race full of history and surprises and stunning feats, that remains the longest ever breakaway. We're talking about Fuga Pinarello before, and I don't think that will ever be broken, given the lengths of the stages nowadays, thankfully. Pretty inhumane back in the day, the things that these heroes were asked to do. Especially given the equipment that they were riding on. I mean, back in those days, that would have been 25 years before the first derailleurs were seen in the peloton. And the development of the derailleur, as we see now, the new incarnation, electric gears now we have, but back then the derailleur was banned by the organisers of the Tour de France, and the only reason that it was introduced was because alongside the Tour de France they had a sportif event that amateurs could ride, and what happened in the mid-1930s, the amateur riders were beating the professionals, and the professionals had a strike to say, unless we can have gears, we're being made to look like fools. So finally the organiser of the Tour de France had to acquiesce and allow the professionals to use derailleur gears because they were getting a kicking by the amateurs. So it's quite, but yeah, the technology available back then was pretty basic. A sprocket on either side of the wheel to change for the mountains. They used to turn the wheel round, weren't allowed any assistance at all. But some classic stories from back in the day. Well, now I know you've had your lunch, I can tell you about the local speciality from where we're riding through today. We're going through the countryside, around the region of Lazio, and out in the countryside in the farming areas. Fini al sugo di recaglie is the dish from the Lazio countryside. Inexpensive but authentic, says Oggi Cucino, which is one of the internet channels that is providing us with some information about the local food that we're going through. Fini means very thin. It's the pasta that they use. They're a narrow fettuccine, egg pasta, homemade pasta, all dressed in a sauce made of chicken giblets, cut into small pieces, apparently. Fried celery goes in there, onion, basil, ripe tomatoes, and why not a little splash of wine as well? Of course, you'd have to have a bit of wine in there, wouldn't you? Ready for your tea now, aren't you? I certainly am. Talking of what the riders are eating, it's a longer stage today. 2 musettes, 2 feed zones. does what the riders eat over a 264-kilometre stage, say, change compared to the shorter stage we had the other day, which was around 138 kilometres?
Yeah, slightly. I mean, different riders have different preferences, and depending on the country that the team comes from, there might be different variations and different preferences for riders. But a lot of the Italian teams may have different stuff in the musettes than some of the international teams, for example. Like Tinkoff Saxo, Team Sky and BMC have a really international roster, so riders will be used to different sorts of foods. But today there'll be a little bit of sweet, a little bit of savoury. They'll have little baguettes with cheese and ham and jam in, as well as rice cakes. Rice cakes are very popular, and little cakes, little pastries, and maybe little bits of fruit, as well as energy bars and gels. So a real mix, a real variety, because when you reach into your musette, you don't only want something that's going to give you the fuel, you want something that's going to give you a bit of morale. You want something that tastes nice as well, because it can be quite arduous constantly eating gels and bars. So to have a bit of variety, to have the the imagination of your soigneur to be quite creative, it's amazing how much of a psychological boost eating something a bit homely can actually make.
Yeah, certainly when you're racing for 21 days, eating the same sugary chocolate bars.
It's not good for your system as well. No. I mean, a lot of the stuff, I'm not knocking any of the energy products. They are very, very good, but you have to have a balance between, for want of a better word, normal food that's far easier for your body to digest, because some of these gels, although very effective, they can go straight through you. Especially during a long stage, your body becomes very, very empty. And if you eat something that's too strong that perhaps you're not used to, it can go straight through you and cause you some interesting problems, which I've experienced myself, but I won't go into today.
Pedro Sagan had a little bit of a problem like that earlier on this season as well. Poor Peter. On our way up to Monte Rotondo, that's the only categorised climb of the day today. 4th category climb. Some history on the right-hand side, located on the Via Salaria. Of course, a strategic point, as you mentioned, of all those little villages perched on hilltops for the defence of Rome, the centre of the Roman Empire, of course. Some narrow streets, roads that have been there for hundreds, thousands of years. So through the Lazio countryside and heading down towards the province of Frosinone. Frosinone hosting Fiuggi, which is our stage finish again today. The last time we were here, it was Fran Ventoso, the Spaniard, who took the one. And he beat Mark Cavendish in a sprint back in 2011. So the fact that Fran Ventoso beat Mark Cavendish tells you something about the arrival as well. Certainly wasn't a flat road. That was Movistar beating Cavendish back in the day. Time to go here from another sprinter of sorts. We see the Pirazzi fan club. This is Tom Bonen there.
With Tom Bonen at the start of the long stage, very long stage. This is the key for today.
Yeah, it's going to be hard last 3 days before the rest day. The distance is affecting everyone, I think. I don't think it will make a lot of difference now for the classification the next 3 days, but for sure everybody's already suffering from the first 6 stages, and it will continue to be like that.
And personally, how are you day after day?
I'm okay. Yesterday was good. I came a little bit too late. I had to do my sprint already to arrive in the wheel of Greipel, and my result was gone. But it's been very hectic in the sprints also, and I hope I will be able to do better in one of the next few stages.
Okay, thank you very much, Tom.
83 kilometres to go. 8 minutes and 38 for the breakaways 4, as we see Van Basso in front of Alberto Contador. Roman Kreuziger behind him on his wheel, the Czech. Alberto Contador Velasco from Pinto, just outside of Madrid. Splits his time now between his official residence in Lugano in Switzerland and Pinto, as we look out to the categorised climb. Up to Monte Rotondo. Breakaway on the top right-hand side of your screen there. Number 34 is Nicola Bohem, 1 minute and 12 down. Marco Bandiera, who's with him, is 1 minute and 8 down. Nikolai Mihailov at 56 minutes 1 second, as we see David de la Cruz, the Catalan rider, back towards the car. And Pierpaolo De Negri's the most dangerous in inverted commas, at 50 minutes and 55 seconds today in the break. There's Fabio Aru in his white Best Young Riders jersey. Now, with all the stuff that's happened to Contador, if you're Fabio Aru, Rigoberto Urán, who desperately needs to make some time up, or indeed Richie Porte, who is at 20 seconds from Alberto Contador, what's the rule on ethics here today? What's the rule on sportsmanship, Matt? A few people writing in on Twitter. Remember, we love hearing from you. Hashtag home of cycling. Is it considered acceptable to attack Alberto Contador later on today if he's in a little bit of difficulty? It's not an easy one, is it?
No. Okay, let's look at the rules. There aren't any. You can, of course, you can attack. But generally, given this situation, and I don't think we're going to see anybody attack today. You could argue there are a couple of opportunities. The running is quite difficult. Difficult enough, I think, to whittle this bunch down, depending on how hard the teams ride at the front to maybe have a field of 70 or 80 riders coming into the finish. I don't think it's going to be a day to suit the sprinters. So you could see there an opportunity to try and unseat Contador from the perspective of Aru, because he only lies at 2 seconds, and given that there's an uphill gradient for a kilometre or more, actually 4 or 5 kilometres, it gently rises before kicking up to the line and then flattening out with about 350 to go. But I think they will pay respect to Alberto. We saw Fabio Aru come to see Alberto on the line, and then just looking at the way they exchanges the body language, I think Aru was genuinely sorry that Alberto had come down, and if Aru were to take the jersey in this race, he wants to beat Alberto Contador fair and square. So I think today, I don't think we'll see Richie Porte, I don't think we'll see Fabio Aru attack, but should Alberto Contador, because he can't get out the saddle and put the power down, because I think it's going to be a fast finale, there's a stage up for grabs here, and some teams have been eyeing this, BMC particularly, because this could be a stage for Philippe Gilbert. Remember, he's winless so far this year, so an important stage for a rider like him. But I think we won't see any of the GC protagonists attack. Tomorrow will be different, because we have a mountaintop finish, and it will simply be, we'll see if Alberto Contador will simply crack because of the pain or his inability to ride. But today I think there'll be almost an entente cordiale and some respect paid to the Maglia Rosa.
Pierpaolo De Negri off to take the King of the Mountains points, a 4th category climb, the only set of points up for grabs today. And it's 3 points to Pierpaolo De Negri, 2nd Marco Bandiera, and in 3rd the other Italian rider Nicola Bohem, with Nikolai Mikhailov, the Bulgarian road champion, choosing not to get involved in that fight. So, blue jersey safely on the shoulders of Jan Polans for yet another day. The stage winner the other day on the only mountain stage we've had so far to Abetone.
What a reception we're getting here. Absolutely fantastic.
Well, it's interesting, when you get south of Rome, I know we've had a few stage finishes in Fiuggi, and often for transitional stages we go to the likes of Anagni, Benevento, Frosinone itself, other places in this region. But it's not always, once you get south of Rome, that you get to see the Giro d'Italia most years, because the infrastructure, the divide between north and south in Italy, remains so great. And I know I've got some southern friends who won't thank me for saying this. They'll be on the phone all tonight as soon as I get off air, but it is very different. The state of the roads, the state of the hotels, the density of the towns, as we see the little sprint podium again for Pierpaolo De Negri. You really do notice it when you get south of Rome, south of Naples, and it is noticeable in most Giro d'Italia routes, apart from maybe once or every 3-4 years, where for political reasons they have to pay a little more notice to the south. The Giro tends to stay north of Rome.
No, you're quite right. If you look at the maps of the recent Giri, you will find that it will go south, but there will be long transfers, and you'll maybe have a quarter of the race, sometimes less, sometimes a third of the race in the southern peninsula. But generally speaking, I mean, when I rode, I think we had just 4 stages, but there were big transfers in before we went round in an anti-clockwise direction. But primarily, 2 weeks of the race were essentially in the northern third of Italy, and that has been the case in terms of my awareness of the Giro over the last 20-25 years as well.
Still BMC at the front. A lot of work for them and Trek Factory Racing today. Trek Factory Racing, we've seen Giacomo Nizzolo take those intermediate sprint points today. Came and won the mini sprint, if you like, for 5th place, just ahead of Sacha Modolo and Elia Viviani. If you're tuning in a little late, Viviani's 2 points means that he is now level with Andre Greipel in the Maglia Rossa, or red jersey standings, the point jersey. There is the white jersey holder, Fabio Aru, the Sardinian, riding as Italy's #1 man for this Giro d'Italia. Just behind him you can see Luis Leon. Couple of temporary speed bumps to go over.
Yeah, the riders generally trying to bunny hop over those. They're the kind of things you don't want to be holding too loosely on the bars, but again, there'll probably be a few shouts in the peloton just to make sure that everybody's aware of it.
Henrik Hauser there, the Australian champion, one man who is hoping to have his chance today. Of course, a good classics rider who's been so unlucky. A little conversation there between De Negri and Bandiera.
It's interesting when you can, get the opportunity to hear the riders just exchanging, a little bit of conversation, and also, contrast that situation there. The riders clearly able to speak to each other. Contrast that from the last 25 kilometres, 25, 30 k's of a stage when they're really, really riding hard. That just shows the amount of effort. They're not going flat out at all. They're having to measure their effort, given that today's so long. So that will give them the ability to talk, to communicate with each other, because it's a day you really have to measure it, especially given it is undulating, it's up and down, and also with that headwind. It is one of those days where the measurement of effort and the ability to understand how far you can push yourself and ride within your limits is very, very important indeed.
We didn't catch the whole conversation there, but the response was 2. 2 is how many points in the men's classification Marco Bandiera had today. Perhaps just asking each other where they stood on the respective classifications, given the fact that Bandiera was in the break yesterday. Nice to see those number 108s commemorating, of course, Walter Weiland. Very, very sadly died 4 years ago racing this race.
All those little pink clackers as distributed by the little caravan. The caravan isn't quite as big as it is in the Tour de France for the Giro, but clearly lots of baseball caps and pink clackers. What's that in Italian? What's a clacker? What would that be called? I don't know.
I think but anyway, the Catalan word castagnet.
Castagnet.
7:54 as the gap goes ever so slightly down, and it's gone noticeably down by a couple of minutes ever since Trek Factory Racing just added a little bit more firepower into that break. There's 2 men riding, and they've got it well under control at the minute, and given the fact that this is such a long stage as well, the guys up front are going to tire today. Yeah,
it's a bit of a coming together here. I wonder if somebody's dropped a bottle. There's clearly just a pinch point in the road there. And that's sometimes, I mean, they've got Trek Factory Racing have put Marco Coldan on the front with a beard. Looks like he's actually come down in this race too. You can just see his right knee is bandaged up. But primarily it's just been Rick Zabel. Almost since we've come on air, I don't think I've seen any of the Tinkoff Saxo riders, give any assistance to Zabel. Because, of course, up the road, no threat at all to Alberto Contador's lead. But BMC clearly want to try and get the win today, as do Trek Factory Racing. And they've got a couple of sprinters on their roster, haven't they? Giacomo Nizzolo. But this stage would suit Fabio Fellini far more than Nizzolo.
And he's in form as well. He's a man who's really in form this year.
Yeah, he won a stage at the Tour de Pays Basque, put away Michael Matthews at the finish there.
Who's another candidate for today, we'd have to say as
definitely, well. Definitely, yeah. I think Michael Matthews won't be far from perhaps adding another stage. Already won a stage in this race in the pink jersey. So, but interestingly, Orica, I think they've done enough already. They're maybe going to take a sit back and maybe just do a bit of freestyling towards the end.
Rick Zabel there in the black and red for BMC Racing, who've brought a squad with 4 debutants to this Giro d'Italia. The most impressive of those debutants, you'd have to say, is Stefan Kung. King Kung, as they're already calling him in Switzerland. Already a European champion on the road, a world champion on the track, and a World Tour stage winner after that very impressive ride to Fribourg, it was, in the Tour de Romandie. Well, our social media department here at Eurosport UK TV christened this gentleman on the left-hand side Uncle Albert. We were talking about the Fast Show and Gianni Savio being Swiss Tony this week. There's a reference to the 1980s sitcom Only Fools and Horses for you. That gentleman was here 4 years ago on the finish line. And remember him walking up and down, dressed as Garibaldi, I think he is. As you see again, there's number 108. Brilliant to see.
Yeah, it's always great. It makes such a difference when the villages and the towns come out to cheer, and especially, the kids. when the school kids come out. It's really wonderful, and the riders do take that on board, and it does give you a little bit of a lift. Roldan just leading them through here. No more points on offer, remember, for the KOMs. Not too much of a rise. Only a 4th category, that one.
Gap down at 7 minutes and 45 seconds. Properly timed there through the top of the climb. The only categorised climb of the day, well, there are 2 unclassified climbs in the final 15 kilometres that should suit the classics legs and puncheurs, really. These are the guys in the break in the meantime. Bandiera, Mihailov, Denegri, and the man in the green is Bohem. Nicola Bohem riding for Bardiani.
We're just interestingly talking about social media. Oh, sorry, we're going to have a tweet now. Sorry, I'll...
Well, we're talking about the final climbs towards the end of the day. And our producers have found this tweet that talks just exactly about that for us. And it's thanks to @VeloViewer. 4 kilometres remaining, and here is one of those climbs. The final climb, the unclassified climb, 6.3 kilometres at 4%. Similar to going twice up the Poggio, so talk of classics legs, not too wrong there.
That's actually very well. It does put that into perspective for you, especially given the distance of the race. Not quite as long as Milan San Remo, but approaching it, and given the fact that they've already had several days of very, very hard riding, it could be decisive. But again, I don't think it's going to be decisive for the general classification. It's all about the stage win today. And interesting, we had a couple of people on Twitter so saying that, is the race therefore effectively neutralised because of what happened yesterday? Doesn't it make a mockery of the race? No, it doesn't. Today, when you look at it in the cold light of day, on the assumption that Alberto Contador was fit, wouldn't really provide an opportunity for the general classification contenders, given we've got the high mountains to come and a very difficult stage tomorrow. It's just that in cycling, there is a tradition of respecting a leader's jersey, so it doesn't actually negate any of the racing at all. If Alberto tomorrow were to be dropped, then he would be dropped and we'd have a new leader of the race. So it isn't about making a mockery of the race. It's just, it's important that the rules, the unwritten rules, are respected. And as I say, ordinarily today wouldn't really provide an opportunity for Aru or Ran or anybody else or Richie Porte to attack Alberto anyway. So I think the status quo will kind of remain, unless Alberto becomes in difficulty and simply gets dropped. Then of course it's a different matter. They certainly won't wait for Alberto. I think that's a difference between not attacking and not waiting.
Nikolai Mihailov just going back to the car, getting back onto the front of the breakaway. With that wonderful comparison, and thanks to @VeloViewer there with the twice up the Poggio analogy. Another one from last evening, looking at the distance of the stage. Today's stage, 264 kilometres. Liège-Bastogne-Liège this year, 253 kilometres. It's longer than the Doyenne.
There we go. Again, another way of putting it very well into perspective. And again, a warm day again. It looks like the sun, we had quite an overcast start. But again, Roldan there decided to unzip his jersey to keep cool.
Marco Coledan. Sylvain Chavanel's bike there. 7:25. That's the gap from the 4 men in the break all the way back to the peloton. Just under 75 kilometres to go today. Andre Greipel, the stage winner yesterday. Alberto Contador remains in the Maglia Rosa, the race lead. We have Jan Polans in the blue King of the Mountains jersey. Andre Greipel, of course, the stage winner in red today. So if you're looking for his normal German champions jersey, no point in looking for that today, because he will not be wearing it. Italy in May, in the meantime, always attracts the crowds, as does the Giro d'Italia. Henrik Hausler looking brilliant in that Australian champions jersey. Thanks to Luke McLaughlin for riding in, saying, I struggle to recall a more badly dressed breakaway. Perhaps 90s looking jerseys with all the sponsors on it. It's what you get with the second division teams, really.
I think that's one of the most endearing things about the Italian teams, is the fact that they like the fluo colours. not necessarily is my cup of tea, so it's almost like they're sort of perpetually existing in 1993. But and this lovely array of different sponsors. But that's what makes Italian teams Italian teams. They've got their own identity, and I think, okay, maybe not the kit I would like to buy, but that's what they are. They're the way they are because of the different multitude of different sponsors they have to give exposure to.
And the multicoloured peloton heads on towards Fuji. 73 kilometres of this stage still remain. Approaching 4 p.m. in the afternoon in Italy. Average race speed today into a headwind on the longest stage of this Giro d'Italia. Less than 35 kilometres per hour. Interesting that we were talking up the great entertainment offered by shorter stages this week, Matt. And do we really need these long stages in the race?
It is. It is a good question. We're just going to go to an interview with Marcus Burkhardt, and we might be talking about that in a couple of moments.
With Marcus Burkhardt of the team BMC. Marcus, is it a stage for a possible breakaway today?
Yeah, it could be, but I think this is also a classic distance, this race today, this stage, and I expect that they will fight for the win from the bunch out.
They say it's like a classic today, but the profile is not like a classic. It's a bit flat.
Yeah, in the beginning it's flat, but if you look the last two climbs, and after 240, 250k, this climb's gonna feel different.
Okay, thank you very much. Dankeschön.
Marcus Burkhardt obviously think it's going to be a very, very difficult end to the stage. We were talking about stage length before we managed to very quickly get that little word with Marcus Burkhardt into the coverage. Longest stage today, 264 kilometres, longer than Liège-Bastogne-Liège, very close to Tour of Flanders length. I think there's only 900 metres in it this year. Of course, a lot less in terms of the cobble climbs and things like that. We don't have that here. Very different race, but also Tour of Flanders, Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Milan-San Remo, they're all standalone races. This is in a Grand Tour, a 21-day Grand Tour. After a frenetic start to the race, we've had a team time trial, we've had some explosive racing so far. Fantastic, fantastic first 6 days. This is day 7. We're on tired legs, approaching the end of the first week. Tomorrow we've got a big mountain stage down at Campitello Matese. A difficult day again on Sunday. Did the peloton really need this long day today, Matt?
From a rider's perspective, probably no. And there are a few riders saying, why do we need these long stages? As we see Alberto Contador and the shoulder, you can just see through. It looks like there is some padding underneath there, a little bit of bandage, but support. But I think the riders would probably think no. But I think this year the Giro organisers have firstly created a very exciting course. It's an imaginative course. It's a course that, you know, over the last few years we've seen, you know, almost ridiculously different Giro d'Italia, you know, some of the most ferocious climbs day after day. So although there are some high mountains, it's not overly mountainous. And the organisers have also looked at reducing the transfer time. So it's like, how much can an organiser do? It's a tour of an entire country. You know, we've talked about that. The Vuelta, the Tour de France, they have to go to the different regions. They have to give exposures to different countries, different cities willing to put money in. And it's all about striking a balance between the race, as we see the entire BMC team now moving to the front. Again, we had that interview with Burkhardt there. Yeah, definitely nailed on for Philippe Gilbert today. That's why we've seen the red and the black boys all at the front. But back to the stage distances. I think it's right that the shorter stages do certainly provide some fast, some rapid, some exciting racing. But I think, given the fact it's a 3-week tour, from time to time, I think it's important that the longer stages are gradually reduced. But I think they still have a place, but as long as they're minimised. And again, if you want to essentially reduce transfers and still join the country together, from time to time there is going to have to be 1 or 2 strategically relatively long stages. But I think as long as the organisers continually work to reduce them, that's only going to be good for the sport.
Yeah, after playing devil's advocate at the start there with the question a little, my personal view would be that we're talking a variety on a Grand Tour, and that is part of Grand Tour racing. You have to deal with every single type of condition. If you're a good overall rider, you'll get through all of the stages and you'll win the race. That's what a Grand Tour is all about to me. As we see the King of the Mountains come back.
Yeah, Jan Polans there, just back to get some more fuel. Couple of gels, a word with his director sportif. He's going to be safely in that jersey today, no danger at all. A couple of points lead. Well, so he's actually level on points with Kochetkov in that competition, but no threat at all today for him.
Luca Paolini towards the back as well, wearing 171. Interesting with BMC coming to the front of the race, just taking over. The dynamic is changing, and the gap has gone down to below 7 minutes now. Nice and controllable still. Still Rick Zabel though. Movistar joining BMC at the front with less than 70 kilometres to go. Now, if they could do something with Giovanni Visconti today, and do something by taking some time at the end here, we would have a possible change of the pink jersey. 56 seconds if he were to win by 47, with a time bonus there. We'll be saying pink jersey. That wouldn't be the worst situation for Alberto Contador either, would it?
Not necessarily, and Visconti's...
Because he's not a danger overall, is Visconti?
No, he's not. I mean, the stages for Visconti, although he's a good climber, he revels on the climbs that Tuscany offers, really, generally the 4 or 5 kilometre length climbs. He's not known as a rider that can ride particularly well in the high mountains, but it does provide an opportunity, as you say, lays at 56 seconds, that you could argue that they could send Visconti long, because it's the kind of climb that could suit him, and then backed up by Lobato in the final should he get caught, and what it would do, put BMC on the back foot to try and bring Visconti back.
We saw Lobato involved in the sprint yesterday. The man from Andalusia in the very south of Spain was tweeting last night and saying, well, I was disappointed on the first sprint stage. The sensations and the feelings were much better today, and he hopes to be involved in the coming days. So that's good news for fans of Juan José Lobato of Movistar. Another man to throw into the mix in terms of having a go today will be Andre Amador, who's been in great form this week, the Costa Rican. Yeah,
Amador lines at 118. He's in 10th position overall and has looked very good on the climbs at the moment. But I think perhaps... I'm not so sure about the Visconti option. It certainly is one, when you look at the finish, it would definitely suit him. But it could be that they're just putting a couple of riders at the front. It looked like it was Dea Quintana, heavily bandaged, brother, of course, of the current Giro champion, moving up the front to give a little bit of assistance to BMC. But the pace really has started to go up a little bit now. And interesting, I think it's quite important that they bring the gap down a little bit now, because the back end of the race does get quite hilly. There's a little bit now, probably 15 or 20 kilometres of relatively flattish roads, where it's far easier for a team to work as a unit. It then becomes more difficult for a climb to ride as a unit on undulating hilly terrain unless you're a team that's got more climbers in it. So I think they're going to want to bring the gap down a little bit so it's containable. But again, with this headwind finish, it's always going to be a very difficult ask for our four breakaway people today.
Afternoon, Mick. Mick Jagger, Rigoberto Urán. Rockstar hair pulled out the back of that helmet there. Not been a great first week for Etixx Quick-Step. Chance with a profile today, and the riders they have to look at changing that. Tom Bonan looking very positive at the start when we spoke to him earlier today. Rigoberto Urán, and as far as the GC contenders are concerned, would be a guy who, should he wish to do, probably best placed out the big four to take advantage of a profile like today. It's still not suiting him right down to the ground, but in terms of a far-fetched scenario, he would be one of the guys that might well like the look of that a little.
Yeah, I think so, but I
think about the London Olympics here.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he can ride well on the flat. He's very tactically astute. Of course, it was a very, very fast run into the London Olympics. You wouldn't think ordinarily that Rigoberto would have medalled, but he got in that split on that day.
Yeah, that's what everybody was talking about.
But he got away. He took his opportunity. But personally, I think Rigoberto will use today and yesterday as an opportunity just to try and, because clearly he's not firing on all cylinders. We don't know why. That could be just an issue of form. There was suggestions a couple of days back, just before the crucial stage to Abitone, that he had a bit of a head cold. But again, it's not all over. He's only at 1 minute 22 seconds, lies 12th on GC. So hey, it's not over at all. But I think for Rigoberto Urán, his team will look after him. We'll try and make sure if there is a split in the peloton, he's in the front split. I don't think he'll be the one who puts his nose in the wind at all. I think for Rigoberto, he's looking forward to, looking to tomorrow to try and be as strong as possible, and maybe using today as a day more of recuperation, more than actually trying to attack.
65 k's to go. Rigoberto Urán was on Italian television last night. Good joking mood, taking selfies with everybody, all the presenters afterwards, joining in the debate. It's a nice change from the serious or authoritative figure of Mario Cipollini that's been on there the last couple of days, laying into everybody as he usually does. He's good entertainment though, is Cipo.
I think that's what Cipo is all about. He's a showman, isn't he? And maybe a touch of controversy, just to throw something into the mix, bit of a fly in the ointment, and then walking away. I think that's his kind of character, isn't it? I mean, they are far-fetched, but you know, he's an important rider in the pantheon of Italian sport. World champion, multiple stage winner, you know, and always did something different at the Giro d'Italia, whether it was riding with no sleeves, whether it was riding in that muscle skin suit in Psycho, always getting fined, etc., etc. But he doesn't care, and he still doesn't care now. He's a very big persona. He's a star of Italian television, and lots of other people can comment on the racing and do the punditry, but he just has to bring something else, I think, and that's what makes him Cipo.
The Lion King, as he's known, was bemoaning the lack of big Italian teams at the minute. Of course, there's only one Italian World Tour team left, Lampre Merida, and it was an interesting debate. It was a little naughty at times. It was almost bordering on casual xenophobia, really, of foreign teams, anything that wasn't Italian. It wasn't a great listen always. However, he was just talking about the fact that all the Italian stars have to move to foreign teams to get their chance now, but it's all part of the globalization of cycling, and different teams involved, the spreading out of the wealth to different areas, and surely in general the globalization of cycling, although it might be difficult for traditional nations to accept, generally it's got to be a good thing, hasn't it, getting everybody involved?
For the sport to survive. Sorry, is our first view. Swiss Tony, he's got a little nice pinstripe number on there today, looking very suave as ever. Having another chat.
Has he sold any cars during this Giro yet? I'm not sure. Every day he strides into the press room following the stage as well. Confident, always has something to say. I wonder what he does for the rest of the year. May is his month. They've been doing a lot of racing all over the world, actually, of Androni Giocattoli. They've been in Malaysia, didn't ride Tirreno this year.
Tour of Azerbaijan they were doing recently as well, so they're our team. The thing is, as a pro-continental team, when you don't always get invited to the World Tour races, you have to go further afield, and that's another, you know, we talk about the globalization of sport. There are opportunities to race all over the world now, which I think should only be celebrated, and a lot of those races we show here on Eurosport as well. So the different races have different characteristics, different parcours, you know. Yeah, I think all those races are important and integral to the future growth of the sport.
Yeah, big positive move, just difficult for the Italians, French and the Spanish to accept, perhaps. Welcome back to viewers on British Eurosport as well. Just saying it's brightening up a little today. Contador's worries about the rain jackets. Hopefully for him and hopefully for the future of the race. We want a fight between the top riders here. Will be unfounded. There's Bernie Eisel coming to the front with Richie Porte for Team Sky. And we have, not so long away, an intermediate sprint coming up as well at Cave. Comes in quite a few kilometres' time. A little further down the road. We've got another rise before then. And of course, BMC have been doing a lot of the work at the front. Everybody wanted to stay safe and commit and make sure everything's okay. 6 minutes and 9 the breakaway has, and it's still well in control here, Matt.
Yeah, very much so. It's gradually coming down, not coming down too quickly. But again, using this, I say, easier section of road to try and eat into that lead, to make sure it's manageable on the final run-in. They don't want to leave themselves a very difficult task, because if, as I said yesterday, if the lead drifts out too far, it makes it very difficult on the run-in. Still possible to bring it back, but you go through your riders far more quicker. It's far more efficient to use your riders over a longer period of time for less intensity than panicking and perhaps relying on, well, other teams will look to you then to ride, and it becomes a bit panicky. So they're riding at a good tempo at the moment, and definitely that's they should be able to bring that back, given that headwind too. But yeah, interesting to see Team Sky moving up the outside. Again, I think that's just about placing Richie Porte in the right place.
Talking of Richie Porte, we've just had a tweet from Benj Lane. Thanks for writing in. Home of Cycling, hashtag Home of Cycling, if you'd like to get in touch with us. He thinks that Richie Porte is going to win this Giro d'Italia. He's at 22nd. There's a long way to go and a lot of fight left in this Giro. We've only had just the beginning. So much more to come. 2.5 weeks left yet, all exclusively live on the Home of Cycling on British Eurosport. 60 kilometres remain. Now, just to put all that crazy crashy business to bed yesterday, the one thing we haven't talked about that Juan Antonio Fletcher mentioned right at the top of Giro Extra today was safety. The barriers on the side of the road. It's really difficult to judge exactly what to do and how to approach it. To an extent, the organisers have their hands tied behind their backs. You can't really legislate for idiots and people who don't know what's going on the side of the road. We've had one spectator who's got a little excited with a huge camera lens. He's caused the crash yesterday. Yes, he'll be feeling pretty awful about it now, I'm sure. Pretty sure he didn't mean to do it. However, people need to know, need to be educated in what to do when watching a bike race, how far to lean over. Could the organisers themselves have done a little, as Juan Antonio suggested, a little more by maybe changing the type of barrier at the side of the road? Ones that lean in like we have at the Tour de France instead of the straight ones?
I think you know, that there's been suggestions about double barriers to create a vacuum almost. But what that would do, straight away, you'd narrow the finish straight. So I think that could end up being more dangerous by making finish straights even narrower. So I think, you know, if it was looked at, I've no doubt there will be some debate following this rather unfortunate incident. But I think Juan Antonio talking about the angled barriers, I think that's a good idea. It means that it doesn't actually, you know, it doesn't actually limit the crowd. I mean, they'll still be able to see and sense the race as they do. But in relation to, you know, them dangling over the side, having cameras, and lots of them use actually these batons now, as we see Dare Quintana there, sorry.
Big table tennis fan, Cecilia Baena, his favourite player. Still bandaged up, as you can see, in a right mess from that horrible crash in Genoa. Yeah, lots of, although Dare Quintana is very dark-skinned and tanned, you've noticed on his left arm he's got lots and lots of sun cream. Now, what riders will do when they come off and they take a lot of skin off, the sun can be very, very damaging and cause some really, really nasty scarring. That's why, generally speaking, you'll see riders with suntan cream over the top of any scars, and that's what that was. That was a mixture of cream and suntan cream to make sure it helps the healing process, and you don't get this really nasty build-up of scar tissue. And in addition, he was heavily bandaged on his knee as well. But no, I think it needs to be looked at. Fortunately, if let's look back, the last time we had an incident like that was the policeman taking a photo when back in the mid-90s, wasn't it? Yeah, it was in Armentières, I think it was, at the Tour de France. But that was a policeman standing in the road. He was taking a photo. These instances are few and far between, so you have to take a look at them in perspective. But also you have to look at trying to learn by mistakes and by things that happen. And interestingly, and I've not seen it so far in our coverage of the Giro d'Italia, but a week or so ago, the UCI have actually made a very, very good info video with a lot of the pros are on it, saying to the fans, hey, we love you at the side of the road. It was ASO, actually. Yeah, ASO. We saw it during the coverage of Liège-Bastogne-Liège.
That's right. And I think I think it's more of that educating people, because, as you say, that camera guy, I bet he's, you know, I don't know whether he's been identified or not. I know nobody's, apparently at the moment, the race organizer, Mauro Vegni, isn't going to take action against him. And it's more about educating
Yeah, we don't want
people
to discourage fans from coming in. Of course, yeah, there have been really serious consequences, certainly in the case of Daniele Colli, who's had that awful injury, a fracture of both the humerus and the radius. It looked absolutely horrible when we saw it very briefly on our screens yesterday. There is one little suggestion that the GC guys should have perhaps been a little further back yesterday and not as involved in the sprint. But as we were talking about when we came on air, that would maybe mean if a gap opens up between a couple of wheels at the front, that they're going to have time differences, and they don't want that. They already have the rule that within 3 kilometres, if there is a crash of the finish line, that there are no time differences and everybody gets the same time. But if there's no crash, no incident, and there's a gap between wheels, then you will still have people racing because there will be time differences. So it's really, really difficult to judge in terms of the safety and the rules and what the UCI can do about it.
Yeah, it's how you divide it up. Do you say, I mean, because there are some stages, and today I think is a good example, although there's a kick to the line, you know, if there's a time gap, you know, if there's a 1 second gap between the back wheel of one rider and another, the time is taken from the front of that group to the back, and when the bunch is spread out, that can amount to 10 or 15 seconds, even though the gap in the middle is only 1 second, because it's the time is taken from the first rider of that group to cross the line. That's why, although the GC contenders generally move out the way for the sprint, what they won't do is drop like a stone to the back of the peloton, because there sometimes are splits, especially in particularly fast finishes. So the only way they'll be given the same time is if they have a mechanical or there is a crash. And let's look at yesterday again. I mean, Colli got taken off on the left-hand side by that spectator's long camera lens, but Alberto Contador was completely the other side of the road. He was like 7 or 8 meters away because of the ripple effect of the crash. I don't think you can fault Alberto Contador, but again, because it always, I mean, you can look at this from so many different angles, but I know Venya, the organizer, was mortified at this crash, but he can't, to use his words, he doesn't want to put riders in a cage, but by the same token, this does need to be looked at. And I think, you know, the barrier issue, I think the Tour de France perhaps have got the barriers right. Have those angled barriers so if there is somebody leaning over, at least they're not encroaching into the rider's space, because the riders have enough to deal with in the chaotic, you know, frenetic last moments of a sprint, rather than think about hazards coming laterally and from the side. And
on those barriers, you've got the advertising hoardings that sort of slant down onto the road as well. In terms of impact, it's also better for the riders as well. When they crash, you're not just going into that straight barrier. It's safer for the spectators, and it's safer even when there is a crash.
Yeah, I think especially for these very fast bunch finishes, the flat, speedy bunch finishes, I think that's something that will be looked at and perhaps adopted. Obviously, I can't speak for the race organisers, but I'm sure that they'll be looking at that seriously, just to avoid the possibility of anything like this happening in the future. But again, you know, in company with educating the fans, spectators, and the press, I think hopefully we can learn from this and move on.
It's also a difficult tightrope to walk, trying to educate people without patronising them as well.
Exactly. I think the ASO adverts, I think they were spot on, actually. I think it's nice to hear it coming from the riders themselves.
Exactly. Struck the right tone. Race situation here on stage 7 of this Giro d'Italia. 55 kilometres remain. 4 men up the road. Pierpaolo De Negri on the right-hand side of your screen there in the white, dark blue and orange. He is there alongside Marco Bandiera, Nicola Bohem and Nikolai Mikhailov. 4 riders there, peloton chasing them, 5.5 minutes back. Inside the final 53 kilometres, where there's more climbing and quite a more interesting race route than the one we've had so far today. We've already ridden well over 200 kilometres. It is a mammoth of a stage. Heading up to the Via Prenestina and the stage finish in Fiuggi. We've been around Rome today. We left Tuscany at the start of the day, and we're going to finish in the southeast of the Lazio region in Frosinone. Of course, it all really kicks off once we have the next intermediate sprint. That is at Cave. After that, we're heading towards Piglio, 15 kilometres for the finish. Bit of a U-turn, short descent onto a road which then narrows occasionally. After that, we'll be going up to the new Via Anticolana. The last 10 kilometres, they're slightly uphill. The Monteporciano tunnel, almost 700 metres of a tunnel, straight, ever so slightly uphill. That leads to the final 5 kilometres, as we see Xu Gang again doing domestic duties, in his Lampre jersey back in the cars. And into the final 5 kilometres today, we've got the Via Prenestina we talked about. Good surface on that, nice road, slightly uphill though. Coming into Fiuggi, the spa town. Mineral water comes from there as well. Famous for its chestnut groves too, as the average race speed is up at 35.1 kilometres per hour. The road in the final kilometre, a gradient of about 2%. The road then steepening slightly to around 350 metres to go. 7 metres wide, a gradient of 3 to 4% for the finish. So an interesting finish. Today, though, a very, very slow day. Our colleague Daniel Lloyd has informed us that we're well over half an hour behind the slowest time schedule today, and that's in part due to the composition of the break we've got today. the sort of atmosphere in the peloton after the first week, and of course the headwind, Matt Stevens.
Definitely, riding into a headwind is always very, very difficult. That just naturally lowers the average speed, and again, on the back of some very, very hard days, everybody in the peloton is going to be thankful for a relatively easy day in the saddle. And ironically, although they're going to be spending around 7 hours in the saddle, it's at least they're not pressing on the pedals too much. It's the flip side. They say, well, we're not going to go too hard, but you're going to be in the saddle for a long time as well. So, especially looking ahead to tomorrow's going to be a big GC battle. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be hard at the sharp end of the race. And for many riders, they have a different battle, and that's to try and get through inside the time limit as well, because already there's some big time gaps in this race, and there's lots of different objectives for different riders in the race, riding in the service of your team leader, trying to go on the hunt for stage wins, and for some riders, it's simply a battle of survival.
We saw Dair Quintana there. Movistar walked away with the overall win last year thanks to his brother Nairo. He became the first ever Colombian to win the Giro d'Italia. This year, a different race for them, and we're seeing the evidence of that here as they come working on a stage that it is probably for the stage hunters, the classics hunters. We haven't seen Giant Alpecin involved today, but they've got options as well, the likes of Simon Geschke.
Geschke can ride really well. He'd prefer to get away in a small group, but he's pretty fast after generally when you get those select groups coming into the finish, whittled down by undulating, hilly, punchy terrain. He generally is there or thereabouts. Finished up there in Amstel Gold the last few years, rides well in Pays Basque, those sorts of races. Terreno he finished last year. He nearly won the stage. Alberto Contador caught him with about a kilometre to go, finishing up the brute of a wall. The name of the finish escapes me, but Geschke, will be looking probably more to try and stay near the front, perhaps attack on the run-in. Of course, no threat overall, but yeah, definitely one of the potential protagonists, for today's stage.
Caleb fairly on the right-hand side, riding for Giant Alpecin, who we're talking about. They're in the black jerseys, by the way, the now German team, formerly Dutch registered team. It's a German registered team now, and they've had good news coming out of their camp today. They've renewed the contract of their Dutch second-tier sprinter, Ramon Sinkeldam. He's now signed with the team until the end of 2017. Simon Geschke we talked about, and another name to throw into the mix towards the end, Bert de Backer, who was very, very good towards the end of Paris-Roubaix this year as well for John Degenkolb, the eventual winner.
Yeah, just think he finished just outside or just in the top 10. Did the same the previous year when Degenkolb was second, and de Backer was really in the mix at the end, and rode very strongly in the Tour de Yorkshire a couple of days ago. Was caught on the outskirts of York, nearly took the stage, and that stage was taken by Marino Hofland, who's also riding this race and has already had a second place. But I think the finish today perhaps a little bit difficult for Hofland, but yeah, you never know. Very talented young sprinter.
Marco Colleran, he prepared for his first ever Grand Tour since 2012, I should say, by lining up at the Tour de Romandie. Didn't finish stage 4 though. Class of 1988, he's 26 now, enjoys combat sports as well, and he's a big Floyd Mayweather fan. Carry on the music theme from yesterday, he's a Kings of Leon man.
Good taste.
Former Bardiani rider. Upon hearing news that he'd be signing for Trek and moving to the World Tour, he said he was in 7th heaven. Began the season and his World Tour career down under at the Australian Race Tour Down Under. 2 top 5 finishes at the Étoile de Bessèges, his only notable result so far this season. Gap is down under 5 minutes, thanks in part to the work of Marco Colledani we were just talking about. Still out in the breakaway, his former teammate from Bardiani, Nicola Bohem.
And as we see Mihailov here, the Bulgarian champion, rolling through. We're talking about the work rate of these riders, and we talked briefly about the impact that these long stages have on the staff of the team as well. And today, because it has 2 feed zones, and the riders require, constant feeding, beat-ons throughout the stage. Logistically, especially for the smaller teams who have less members of staff, less vehicles at their disposal, the soigneurs will go to the feed. They'll then have to look at the map and then try and rush through to the next feed. The thing that is good about riding into a headwind, it does give the soigneurs the opportunity to pack up and get to the next feed zone before going on, because you believe you me, when I've been injured in races, I've ended up tagging along with the Soigneurs on a couple of occasions and seeing what happens, and it's a real frenetic rush sometimes, especially if the race is ahead of schedule, trying to get to the next point. And quite often you'll get there set up within minutes, the riders will come by. But generally speaking, well, in all cases, in fact, the organisers of the race in their route book will have the race route, and then running alongside that will be the route that is suggested for the Soigneurs to get to for the feed zone, so they can get ahead of the race and then ahead again to the finish. But again, for the small teams with less staff, they've got to be at the start, or generally there'll be a B team who will go to the feed. They've got to get to 2 feed zones, and then they also want people at the finish to look after the riders, and then again at the hotel. So it's a real battle, and they work very, very long. I mean, obviously it's all about the riders, but it's very long working hours for the mechanics and for the Soigneurs, who are really an important, integral part of the team.
Back at the peloton, we've just seen Rigoberto Urán coming back from the cars. He had an Ethics Quick-Step teammate with him, Peter Vakoc, doing the work. It's going to be a busy time in the back of the cars in the next 20-25 kilometres or so, as you see Oscar Gatto. He wouldn't be a bad shout today. I'm not sure where his form is. We haven't seen too much of him, of course, this season. And as you can see, and as you're just pointing out to me on the screen there, he's got a couple of dressings on his left side.
There are quite a few riders who've got various dressings. He's clearly, I don't know what stage he did come off, but clearly one of the many riders that has unfortunately come to grief. But no, crucial that they get the timings right, because very, very soon the road starts to climb. Well, as you said, we've got the intermediate hotspot sprint. That comes at 229 kilometres. And then, of course, no feeding within the last 20 Ks, and that's when the road really starts to ramp up. So all of your leaders, and we're assuming that the pace will ramp up significantly in the finale, and that's not when you want to be dropping back, because I think there's going to be several riders, you know, a significant amount of riders possibly going to get distanced. So all your team leaders, riders looking to conserve their place on the general classification, riders up there for the stage win, need to be fully fueled and ready for the final 20-25 kilometres.
BMC still working. Trek Factory Racing with them. Dair Quintana just behind. Dair Quintana, who when he first came to Europe before signing for Movistar, like many of the riders who come over from Central and South America do, he spent time with one of the most famous development teams over in Pamplona in Navarra, just outside the Basque Country, just south of the Basque Country. It's called the Lizarte development team. Also hosted Andre Amador when he came over from Costa Rica as well. And Dair Quintana spent a little time with them, and ever since has been at Movistar. Second year with the team this year. Of course, with the great gift that his brother's got, you get the feeling he's going to be playing second fiddle to his brother in terms of performance throughout his career. But
there you go. He's still, as long as you understand your role. You mean you had Lawrence Roach, the brother of Stephen Roach, Axel Merckx, the son of Eddie Merckx. I mean, blimey, it's sometimes as a family member of a rider who has a particularly glittering palmares, it's always very difficult. But you are yourself, and as long as you don't see that as a problem, you can still forge your own path, and sometimes be helped by the name. But as long as it doesn't bring too much pressure.
Think of Saxo this year.
Exactly.
3 sets of brothers in the Movistar team as we're going through Gallicano nel Lazio. Inside 50 kilometres today. Movistar towards the front alongside BMC and Trek Factory Racing. Time for us to go off for a quick commercial break. Back with you. Finale of this stage coming up on the home of cycling. Nikolai Mikhailov, Bulgarian road champion. 2-time Bulgarian time trial champion as well. He's been in the team time trial winning squads in a couple of races on the Europe Tour. For you Irish fans out there, he actually won a stage of the Ross to Castle Island in 2011. As we see Alberto Contador, it's been a while since we've seen him in the peloton. We've been checking out on the process, of course, of the breakaway and how we think the stage is going to go. We've talked about all the incidents yesterday. How's he looking to you, Matt?
It was good that we saw him just get out of the saddle there. He didn't look like he was straining too much. His facial expression, he looked relatively relaxed. Sometimes you see riders carrying a significant injury who might actually be wincing a little bit. But to be fair, I think you can see him subtly sort of holding it in terms of, I think it's slightly, his left side looks slightly less relaxed than the right, but he seems to be getting out of the saddle no problem. And certainly, given the modest nature of the rolling terrain today, if he didn't need to get out of the saddle and it was hurting, you'd be able to sit down and turn the gear. But he's getting out of the saddle from time to time, which suggests that all is good so far. But you've got to bear in mind that they're not going full gas, as the pros like to say. It's I wouldn't say it's a sedate tempo, that the speeds actually come up. Now we've got riders from Cannondale Garmin joining the mix, along with BMC and Trek Factory Racing. So, but it is good to see from a perspective of keeping the pink jersey in the race. He seems reasonably okay at the present time.
Contador, a Spaniard in the pink jersey. That's a Spanish champion, Yonis Aguirre. This is the breakaway. Nicola Bohem from the northeast of Italy, with number 34 on his back there in the green of Bardiani. These guys tiring. You mentioned that, of course, behind there was an up in tempo. Those two factors combined is meaning that the gap is really going down now. 3:36, and it's almost going down by the second as we look at that.
Yeah, almost
on the top left.
Yeah, almost every pedal rev. These guys will be going probably a couple of kilometres an hour slower. And bearing in mind, this is the part of the course actually gets a bit difficult. The climb up to the final hotspot sprint at Cave. That comes at 229 kilometres. That's actually at the top of a bit of a drag. It drags on for about 7 or 8 kilometres, then it drops down, and there's a nasty little ramp before we then drop down again before the 10-kilometre approximately ascent to the finish line. So this part of the course becoming as late as it is, bearing in mind, we've only got 44 k's to go now, but they've already done about 223 kilometres. It's a long day in the saddle, combined with the headwind, combined with the amount of work they've done at the front. It's going to be increasingly hard, and I think we'll see the leads start to tumble over the next few kilometres.
We're talking about Contador before. 9 days he spent in the pink jersey now officially, if you get rid of the 2011 race he had taken off him. 7 back in 2008 when he won the Giro without winning a stage. His boss last night saying, Oleg Tinkov, cycling's a hard sport, but hope he can carry on, as we see Michael Matthews looking to win the stage today, but he's going back to the medical car here. Yeah,
I mean, sometimes riders, Michael Matthews, as far as where hasn't been involved in any crashes. He looks okay. It could be that he's got a headache or something, wants a paracetamol. I'm not too sure. We didn't get to see the conversation there. But often riders do drop down. The race doctor is at the head of the convoy. You have the commissaire's car just behind the bunch, and then just behind that you'll have the race doctor, and then you'd have the rider, or the team car, sorry, of the leading rider on general classification, and then the team cars from that point on will be the highest riders in the general classification too. So that's why we see the Tinkoff car just behind the medical car there. And of course, the medical car needs to be there. It needs to be there so the riders don't have to drop back miles if they're suffering from an injury. And often they can call it past the commissaire's car as well. And often you might see it go up to a breakaway as well. If a rider manages to get in a breakaway and comes off, there'll be a medical car that can go up and join the breakaway before then dropping back as well.
Just while we're having that conversation, another 30 seconds has gone off the gap. Now 3 minutes and 2 seconds. The terrain is going up. It's going to get harder for these guys. Sooner or later, surely somebody's going to be feeling stronger than the others. Are going to say, hang on, I don't like the look of where this is going. And we may see an attack out the group. That's if anybody's got anything left in them. Meanwhile, as Michael Matthews thankfully gets back on and is inside the peloton, we've seen another change at the front, another team get interested. Cannondale Garmin were there. They were there with Nathan Brown. They were there with Ryder Heimstahl as well, who's already lost considerable time on this Giro d'Italia, 6 minutes and 11 seconds. Their presence surely contributing to a faster rhythm behind. Perhaps this stage isn't as nailed on for just the stage hunters as we first suggested.
You don't know. I mean, their best rider is Davide Formolo. They want to keep him near the front. He's 9th place, already taking a stage win. Remember, fantastic stage a couple of days ago. He's only lying at 1 minute and 15. But I think they might be looking at another opportunity to try and take a stage. I mean, Tom Jelti-Slagter, really punchy rider, took a couple of stages.
For him today.
Yeah, took a couple of stages last year in Paris-Nice on very similar parkour, the short, steep climbs. So they might be thinking of Slagter. They might have been part and parcel of a team meeting. He might have said, yeah, I'm going to stick my neck out. This is a stage for me. I'm not riding for the general classification. I haven't gone too deep on the climbs, etc. So, and looking at the roster they have, I don't think we'll see Davide Formolo go. I think he'll be, really, although he's stated that it's all about Ryder Hijsdal soon for the rest of the race, he's going to want to keep his place in the top 10 for as long as possible without, putting him under too much pressure. But I think it's more that Cannondale would want an opportunity to try and go for the stage win. And it's interesting because you have a team meeting about your objectives for the stage. It could be today we want to be the protagonists, and that would come from the Bardiani team and from the Nippo Fantini team. Other teams today, all we do is look after Alberto Contador. Cannondale, okay, we want to look after Slagter to go for the stage win. But things change on the road. I mean, they're in the saddle for 7 hours. So much can happen. A rider could become unwell. So, the team captain will speak to the rider concerned. The protected rider could say, hey, look, my legs are really bad. I've got a stomach ache. I'm just not on for today. Therefore, you need to speak to the direct sportif to reconfigure your plan for the day. So, so much can happen. You can have a plan at the beginning of the day before, at the team meeting, but then, all things can change. So, it's a very, very dynamic process, especially over such a long distance.
We look down on the Sky team on the left-hand side. Richie Port, nice and protected. They've been riding towards the front now for the last 50 kilometres or so. The pink jersey again of Alberto Contador. Crashed in Tuscany yesterday. You cast your minds back all the way to 1956. We had a similar, very serious incident involving the great Fiorenzo Magni. He crashed as we're going through Palestrina, but Magni crashed in 56 and it was in Volterra, also in Tuscany, broke a collarbone, managed to hang on and just look after it for the next 5 days or so. He was only beaten in the end by Charles Gaulle at the end, and just shows that the Giro throughout the history has been a race of absolute warriors and lions. And Contador, as we saw last year at the Tour de France, tried but couldn't carry on with that broken leg, came back in the Vuelta a España, showed how strong he was. There's something to cling on there for Alberto Contador. Just remember the memory of Fiorenzo Magni.
Yeah, you will definitely be inspired as a bike rider by things of the past, things that have happened in the past. There'll be professionals, of an era that you may have overlapped with, that you looked up to, and also from many years ago, a completely different generation. Many riders are historians and fans of the sport and are fully aware of its rich and textured history, and you will draw inspiration from the greats, the true greats, because riders with the capability of winning Grand Tours and the classics want to be part of that firmament, a part of the pantheon of the sport, and to achieve things on a similar level, you have to look at the experiences that people have gone through in the past and thinking, well, if they could do it with poorer equipment, poorer infrastructure, poorer medical support, it's why can't I with all the technology available? And so those stories are so important for riders to look to and be inspired by.
Palestrina existed since ancient Roman times as the city of Praeneste. The green and black jersey with the white Cannondale bike there of the Colombian rider Janier Acevedo, riding for the United States-based team, the Colorado-based team Cannondale Garmin. Also have a base in Europe, in Girona, in the northeast of Spain. 41 kilometres remain, and this breakaway is dying a very, very slow death. 2 minutes and 19 seconds.
The thing is, looking at the competition, Bandiera of Mandroni, Bohem of Bardiani, Mihailov of Sisi Sprandi Pokowice, and De Negri of Nippo Vini Fantini, they won't give up. They will keep riding to the very end, that they will not show that white flag. They probably know deep within, well, they don't probably know, they know that, looking at difficult parkour, the run into the finish is going to be very difficult. They've got the headwind, they've got the few climbs to come, but they won't give up. They'll keep riding and riding, and you know, maybe the strongest man from that group, and it's difficult to assess who that is. They all seem to be sharing the pace at the moment very, very well. Looking at the style of the riders on the bikes, none of them, they're all clearly very tired, but there's not one particular rider who looks the strongest, for example, or necessarily the weakest. It could be they all drift back, but generally speaking, we always see one rider just hold out till the last. And I think it could be, if Bandiera is feeling good, he's going to want to stay out longest to try and make sure that he gets a big, big lead in the Pinarello competition.
Not too far away now from our finishing province, Frosinone. We'll go through Cave soon, and then Genazzano, pardon me. Then on to the Anticolana National Road. Igor Anton is the man on the left-hand side there of the shot we just were looking at. He's wearing the navy blue of Movistar, the Spanish team. This is the breakaway again, and the rider from Nippo Vini Fantini, Pierpaolo De Negri. 40 kilometres to go for the break. That is, it's on the radio time for BMC Racing. What sort of conversations will be going on amongst a team who really are focused on this stage as one that they want to win?
Yeah, that's actually Brent Bookwalter, the American. It's his turn on the front. We had an incredibly long stint by the 21-year-old Rick Zabel. He's now done his turn. Bookwalter's now on the front, combined with riders from Cannondale. He'll just be getting a time check, really, to see, you know, are we going too fast? Are we going too slow? Just getting an update, because the motorbike will come back and give them time checks, but that takes a while, because they have to drive up, stop, do the time, come back, and there can be, you know, 5 or 10 minutes in between each time check. But obviously we get the information on the screens. Most of the teams will have a Eurosport pipe through to the car, and they'll know the time gaps, and they'll be just passing that information on. And perhaps he may be saying that, hey, I can only last another 5Ks, or I'm feeling really good, I'm cool to take it up to 10K to go. Those sorts of conversations. So the Director Sportif is fully aware of where each rider sits in terms of his capacity to deliver to a plan. So you can then basically make sure that you, ensure that riders are in the right place at the right times, and say, okay, X has done his job now, it's your turn to move to the front. As we see a
new shoe for Kevin Arisa. Well, at least they have a new shoe this time. There's no duct tape, as we saw with Androni Giocattoli the other day. Odd shoes on, though, now. Odd
shoes. I don't know if his style... There's one or two riders and teams who have different coloured shoes, but I don't think that was necessarily in the plan. But no, there'll be an exact copy of the other shoes. So,
Well, if there's a bunch group arriving to the end, another man to watch out for if Kevin Arisa. Not too sure how well he's going. He hasn't shown great evidence of having the form in recent months as he did in 2014. Cannondale Garmin, though, really committed to this now. There's a lot of bodies in green and black towards the front here.
Definitely. They've got pretty much the whole team there. Ryder Huisdale also very high up in the mix, just adjusting his earpiece there. But a real injection in the speed now, just by the arrowhead formation. This is a bit of a drop in the hill here.
Are we getting towards the moment with 1 minute and 45? If anybody does have any legs, that they've got to go for it from this breakaway?
Well, looking at the speed they're doing at the moment, there's no real... they are still working very, very well together. I think there's another significant climb in about another 10 or 15 kilometres. It looks quite sharp. It's non-categorised, and if a rider's looking to go on his own, he could go there, because there's a short plateau, a drop down, and then that long, steady climb to the finish. So I think these riders will use each other for probably the next 10 or 15 kilometres before they go it alone.
And will anybody have any energy? They've ridden now more than... 200 kilometres in the breakaway, more or less, and they've been running into a headwind as well.
Yeah, they've spent, you know, each so far probably around 40 kilometres on the front, if you assume they've been doing even turns. And by the evidence that I've seen on the road, it's been the distribution of effort has been pretty even, as we see a rather hirsute Italian chap.
Two riders still up the front there. Nate Brown's been doing a great job for Cannondale Garmin in the last 5 to 10 kilometres. 1 minute and 30.
And there's also, you know, this isn't necessarily just about bringing your protected riders to the finish. What some of the teams will want to do here is to thin this group down as well. That's not a direct assault on the pink jersey. It's making sure the group weeds out the riders that would... Let's assume they're riding for Slagtoe. Bear in mind, I don't know that information, but looking at the kind of roster they have, this parkour, the finish could suit him down to the ground if he's going well. But what they won't want is an armchair ride for all of the riders who are very fast. Because if you get Greipel, for example, you know, to within a couple of kilometres, he could still go for the win. So what they want to do, they want to use the rolling terrain, especially that last drag. They want to make sure the tempo's high to thin that group down. So Slagter is in with a good chance. And also, I think we'll see BMC helping in a minute too. I think BMC will be very happy that Cannondale have come to the front to give them some assistance. I think in the next few kilometres, you might see one or two other teams come into the fore as well.
6.5 hours in the saddle. Breakaway coming back very, very quickly, and when that happens on a parkour like this, there's always a danger that there could be chaos in the race, and that's going to worry the GC guys as well, because if there are attack after attacks coming, just like we saw when we watched the entire stage the other day in Liguria, it's so difficult to monitor exactly who goes on the attack and if they are a danger to your general classification challenge. It's all getting very interesting as we head to the final 35 kilometres of this stage 7. Nizzolo coming across the intermediate sprint just in front of Elia Viviani, and Viviani now should go into the red jersey unless one of his big sprint rivals takes the points on the line today. This was the intermediate sprint. In the breakaway, the points were taken by Marco Bandiera. And look at this, a bit of pushing and shoving on the way through there between Nizzolo and Elia Viviani. There's some needle in that fight, man.
Yeah, it was just a gentle let me up the inside there. I don't think Viviani was overly happy with him just by looking at his facial expression. Viviani's still getting himself a couple of points. They're not needing to go too deep there, but a couple of, well, 3 valuable points. 20 for the win, 12, 8, 6, 4 and 3. So valuable 3 points, which just takes him into lead at the moment from Andre Greipel.
All depends what is going to happen afterwards. A little attempt of rapprochement. It looks as though it was accepted as well, that apology.
I think it was just a gentle coming up the inside. There was no shoving there. Sometimes you do get that, although technically it's illegal to lay a hand on another rider. Sometimes it's just to let them know that you're there. I don't think there was anything bad there at all.
Marco Bandiera there, wearing number 13, numbers upside down. For reasons that Matt was explaining yesterday, of course, all about luck in the peloton and what have you. Interesting. Do you believe in luck in races or not?
I'd like to say I'm quite a pragmatist and non-superstitious, but there's a few little pre-race rituals that I couldn't shake off, and one of them was that I always used to put my right sock on, then my left sock, then my right shoe, and then my left shoe, and I kind of did it without thinking. But there's a couple of times I remember putting on my left shoe first, realising then I had to take my left shoe off, put my right shoe on, and then my left shoe back on again. So I suppose, yeah, I am a little bit superstitious, but that's about it.
Well, it's funny that Richie Porte's wearing bib number 191 at this Giro d'Italia. That was the bib that was worn by Ivan Basso in 2006 when he won the Giro d'Italia. He was the last man to win with that bib. Bib 201 for Contador. No rider has won the Giro with that bib. But, if memory serves me right, I think Contador's won his last couple of Grand Tours outside of the Giro d'Italia with that bib on. I mean, it doesn't really mean a thing, but it's interesting to know from the spectator's point of view if riders and if certain riders do believe in those things.
I think some of them do. I think some will say they don't. But, you know, the example of turning the number 13 upside down is just, I mean, what does it do? I mean, unless you're superstitious, you wouldn't do it. But it's generally accepted that that's what all riders do. So I think riders sometimes are a little bit superstitious. There you go.
The race is on here. 52 seconds is the gap between the breakaway of 4 riders. Probably name them perhaps here for the last time. Pierpaolo De Negri of Nippo Vini Fantini, Marco Bandiera, the Italian of Androni, Nicola Bohem, the 3rd Italian in the group for Bardiani, and Nikolai Mikhailov of CCC Sprandi Polkovic. So that's the Bulgarian champion riding for the Polish team. Points overall standing, confirmation of what we were telling you a minute ago. Elia Viviani in the lead now by 4 points over Andre Greipel. Marco Bandiera in 3rd. And of course that is for the red points jersey. That, however, could all change on the line depending on who were to take the stage win today. 30.5 kilometres to go. It's pretty clear now, Matt Stevens, that this break is well on its way to coming back together. 45 seconds. It's a little wonder, really, because they will be absolutely tired out. Not just after being in the break for over 200 kilometres on the longest stage of the Giro d'Italia today, but after a crazy, crazy first week. interesting that the GC guys, and in particular, let's focus on Alberto Contador with that dislocated shoulder last evening, riding today. Looks as though it's gone fairly well for him as we're heading to Genazzano, but he's about to be put under a bit of stress because you can't have this full neutralisation that we were talking about earlier on today. The race is on now, and it hasn't been instigated by his direct rivals. Orica Green Edge have come to the front, BMC have been working. We've seen also teams such as Cannondale Garmin there, Trek Factor Racing, Movistar, all teams who are not really involved too much in the general classification, but the racing naturally follows behind after that, Matt, and whatever happens here, it is a race, it is on, there's no neutralisation, and Contador is just going to have to cope with it the best he can.
He will. I mean, there's quite a hard tempo being set, Orica Green Edge now coming to the front. This is a stage definitely that Michael Matthews would like to win. Team Sky moving up there as well. I mean, Elia Viviani slightly lighter. They're going to want to possibly look after Viviani, but more often they're going to, well, more often it's their need to make sure that Richie Porte is kept at the head of affairs, because this sort of parcours, if rode quickly, we'll see definitely a few riders being shelled out the back and a smaller group coming to the finish.
Motorbikes, TV cameras, photographers, everybody being pulled out of that gap by the race organisers now, and I think pretty soon we're going to see the neutral service Vittoria car, the white car you just saw there, being pulled out of the gap as well, because it is coming down very, very quickly, despite the best efforts, the frantic efforts at the front there of the man in green, Nicola Bohem, pedalling for dear life, trying to keep it going. They're still working fairly well together, the gap at 44, but there is so much happening in the back and everybody fighting for position. It's a bit like what we saw in the final 15Ks yesterday.
It certainly is. I mean, you just see on the left-hand side, Orica Green Edge, the CCC Sprandi Polkovici in the centre, in that bright orange. Remember, they've got the Bulgarian champion up the road. But as we said before, these four riders, they've been out in front all day long. They know their chance of winning the stage is very, very slim indeed. But despite that, they're still fighting. They're still riding very hard. Just look at them, all of them on the drops. Beforehand, they were measuring their effort, riding on the tops, but now they're riding as fast as they can. They just want to stay out in front for as long as they can.
It's been a very, very slow, calm day so far, but I think it's going to explode into a big, big finale here today. Andre Greipel on the left-hand side in his red jersey for the points leader, not his normal German champions jersey that it is white, being brought up to the front today. The man you're looking at now is Nikolai Mikhailov, the Bulgarian champion for CCC Sprandi Polkovica. 42 seconds as we're into the final 27.5 kilometres of the longest stage of this 98th edition of the Giro d'Italia. The Tour of Italy heading south, heading into the Lazio region and the Frosinone province, into Fiuggi Terme, where we last finished in 2011. The winner on the day was Movistar team with Fran Ventoso. Mark Cavendish was close, he was beaten in the sprint in the end. Could it be one for the second-tier sprinters today? At the minute, Matt, we haven't had any of the big men dropped yet.
No, we haven't. It looks like the bunch is all together, although the pace has really picked up, but significantly. They're on quite a flat bit of road for the next 5 or 6 kilometres. Then they have an uncategorised climb that kicks up pretty much the same height as the finishing climb. Then they drop down again before kicking up immediately, and that long drag into the finish in Fiuggi. So it's the next part of the course which will be significant, and this is where we'll see Alberto Contador. He will be put to the test. As I said, it won't be a direct attack, it will just be the general speed of the racing and the teams looking out and trying to put their riders in position for the stage win.
Alberto Contador is the leader of the race. He's in the pink jersey at the bottom right-hand side of your screen as you look at it there. He's way down. Tinkoff Saxo and his teammates towards the front. And if we're looking for indicators for the mountain stage tomorrow, then the first of them are coming here, because Alberto Contador's drifting all the way down. He has one teammate for company, and it's going to be really interesting to see how he stays position. Mentally, it's going to affect him as well, surely.
Yeah, just moving up the outside. I mean, you generally don't see, unless it's at the first part of the race, any leader of the GC that far down the peloton. He's going to be feeling a little bit nervous. He's going to want to maybe try and stay out of trouble, but he is actively now moving up the outside of the peloton, trying to get himself in a position at the head of affairs. It's very rare to see him isolated, but he does have a rider quite nearby.
Yeah, he has the number 207, Mick Rogers, not too far behind him. The man immediately behind him in the green is Francesco Manuel Bongiorno, who, if you remember the Monte Zoncolan stage last year, he was up there with Mick Rogers, who's just behind him, and they were both having a real go at trying to win the big mountain stage. Bongiorno was pushed off his bike, and Mick Rogers then went on to win the stage after the spectator had interfered. And a day after a spectator's interfered here, we see Alberto Contador realising he was on the wrong side of the road to his teammate, managing to get up on the right-hand side. He's at the front again now. Mick Rogers is going to come with him. And with all the chaos that's been going on, he wants to be very close when those counter-attacks go and when the break is brought back here, because anything can happen in the race then.
Yeah, I mean, Mick Rogers will just move alongside. He'll probably slot in front of him now. There you go, because the position that Contador was in there, he was in the wind. He was at the front of the peloton as the leader of the race. Unless you're attacking or needing to chase down an opponent on a climb, you do not want to ride in the wind at all. That's why we've seen Mick Rogers and now Chris Juliensen move to the front. But yeah, it was uncharacteristic to see him so far back, perhaps just a little bit nervy. And if you're riding in the centre of the peloton, you've got a lot of movement around the outside. It can be that you just get swamped, end up drifting back down the centre. The only way to move up is to wait, be patient, and go back up around the outside. But fortunately for him, he's back in a comfortable place again.
It's not always easy for cycling fans, and certainly new viewers to the sport, to appreciate how much of a team sport cycling is. We saw Contador moving up to the front, though, but also a great illustration of how skilled you have to be position-wise as a domestique. Mick Rogers, who's been a great rider on his own in the time trial, he's won 3 Grand Tour stages himself. Ivan Basso's won this Giro d'Italia a couple of times as well on the left-hand side. Chris Juliensen, all guys who are experts at their jobs. Knowing where Contador is, hearing it on the radio, making sure that they were quickly able to protect him, look after him, and make sure they were to get into the right position at the front. It's a skill and a job in itself, isn't it, man?
It is. I mean, riders will be assigned particular tasks. Juliensen, generally, his assignation has been primarily to ride a tempo on the front. But Mick Rogers, to me, it looks like Lars Mikkelsen has said to me, you do not leave Alberto Contador's side. You primarily ride behind him or alongside him. And although we saw Alberto Contador, we saw a couple of Tinkoff riders at the back because they've been riding near the front and were probably just resting up. We then saw a couple near the front, but Mick Rogers was behind Alberto looking after him, and you always get 1 or 2 riders that you do not leave the side of your leader. The only time you leave his side is when you drift in front of him to keep him out of the wind, and that's what we saw. So it's disciplined. It also requires a great deal of skill, especially where in the last part of a race, when the bunch is essentially like a maelstrom, very, very difficult to control. But of course, Alberto, riding in the pink jersey, will be afforded that respect. So unlike some other riders, when he moves up, he'll just collapse here.
We've had a crash, and with Svitsov who's involved. Svitsov of Team Sky, the number 198, Konstantin Svitsov, a Belarusian rider riding in support of Richie Porte. Doesn't look too serious as of yet in terms of injuries. Also a problem for Manabu Ishibashi of Nippo Vini Fantini. Tinkoff rider at the back. I wonder if a Tinkoff rider was involved. Here we go again, Matt. This is where it happens. It's a parked lorry on the right-hand side.
Ivan Rovny was the Tinkoff rider. Yeah, I think the rider's just slamming on a little bit. And it's actually only Svitsov who's come down.
And just an illustration of nerves at this point. They see that parked van, they think it might interfere again. If you brake at the wrong time, a little too much, it's a bit of a problem for everybody else who's behind you.
Yeah, I think it's just a touch of wheels, because looking at the replay, the lorry was actually parked way in on a lay-by. It wasn't actually jutting out at all. So perhaps, again, this is quite a nervy part of the race. Riders trying to sometimes get through gaps that aren't there. All it takes was a little bit of a touch of wheels and riders come down. But Svitsov is sitting relatively well placed. He's 22nd overall, hasn't lost too much time. And again, he'll be a key player as we hit the mountains, looking after Richie Porte. So thankfully for Richie Porte and Team Sky, he's not injured and back on his way.
General classification teams forming little lines and trains at the front here. The pace isn't on ridiculously at the minute as it was 5 or 6 kilometres ago. The gap is at 32. Just the fact that mostly we've got general classification teams, Bar, Orica, Green Edge, and maybe even Lotto Sudal at the front here. Does the fact that they're on the front and conversations between Tinkoff and Astana, are they just trying to calm this down and delay the catch to the breakaway to make it a little more of a calm finale today?
Yeah, I think so. The gap tumbled from a minute to 45 seconds to 30, but now it's holding steady. We always said these 4 riders will continue to the very last, till the last 100 metres before they concede defeat, and we may even see one of these riders jump away from the group just as the catch is made, as we so often see. But I think, look at the formation of the peloton. They're spread across the road. That generally does happen because of a headwind as well. There's no arrowhead. It's just sort of lessen the urgency at the present time.
The break is hanging on with 22.2 kilometres to go, 32 seconds. General classification team's pretty happy with this at the minute, and they'd even be a little more happier if this break were to carry on a little more and we'd have a counter-attack from these guys, somebody a little stronger than their companions in the break, and just keeping the status quo going as long as possible into this stage. And that surely would reduce surprise attacks and any attacks that might make it far too nervous for them.
Exactly. I think Tinkoff will be thinking, well, if this comes back too quickly, as you said, I mean, it seems like a bit of a cliche, but it is true. It opens up the race, and especially the interesting parkour we have at the finish. There's lots of punchy riders who might quite fancy a bit of an attack. It could favour a solo win today because it's up and down. It's quite twisty on the run-in as well. But of course, once one rider attacks, you then get your counter-attacks, and the counter-attack over that, and then you get the race speed increasing, and then it gets hard, then riders get dropped, and that's potentially, depending on how Alberto Contador's shoulder is, that's when we may see him put under pressure. But at the moment, he's riding relatively comfortably, still in and out the saddle, indicating that he's holding up presently.
Alberto Contador in the pink Giro d'Italia leader's jersey. At the front, Orica green edge, Tinkoff Saxo, and this is Nikolai Mikhailov. Is this the first little dart out of the breakaway? Top time trialist. He's been a national champion on a couple of occasions. Bandiera sitting up behind. He's had enough. He cannot go. Mikhailov has no rival here. And CCC Sprani Polkovica with their Bulgarian champion, Nikolai Mikhailov, the only team left in this breakaway.
Well, as well as being the current road champion in the past, in 2012 is the individual time trial champion of Bulgaria. So a man used to riding quickly on his own, but that was a pretty stinging attack. There's nothing at all any of the Italians who composed the rest of that breakaway could do. In fact, it was Bandiera, the most prolific breakaway rider of the Giro d'Italia so far, who's drifted off the back looking round. His time is up, as is the time of Bernie Arzon. This is where the road really starts to pitch up now. The first of the climbs, the series of climbs before the run into the finish.
This is where Alberto Contador is going to need his team to stay with him today. They've worked extremely hard over the first week of this Giro d'Italia. He will be hoping, beyond all hope, that they have something left in the tank at the end of the day. After what happened yesterday with that crash and dislocated shoulder, he needs his bodyguards around him.
Well, he sat well in the vacuum of the peloton, not taking any unnecessary wind. Richie Port in front of him at the moment as well, just behind the Vasily Kirienka, but it's still Chris Juul Jensen sat on the front as the riders gradually drift out the back. There's Nicolai Bohem straight through the bunch and out the other side. That just shows the amount of effort they've used today in that breakaway.
The Flandrian rider Ilio Kessa on the left-hand side.
Rick Zabel also drifting back. Remember how much work he's put in on the front for BMC. He'll be hoping that Philippe Gilbert on this little drag to the finish can deliver for that team.
Nikolai Mikhailov with just 13 seconds on the Maglia Rosa group. The pink jersey group that is led by Chris Juul Jensen of Tinkoff Saxo. The man in the turquoise jersey and shorts for Astana is the man from Murcia in the southeast of Spain, Luis Leon Sanchez, riding for Fabio Aru, second overall in the Giro d'Italia at the minute, 2 seconds. Richie Port remains at 20 seconds in third, as we see Nate Brown, who's done his fair share of the chasing today to bring the break back.
Yeah, just had a little word with Charlie Wigalius there, basically saying good job, your job's done, before moving up. But Nate Brown's job is done. As I say, he was riding very hard in the previous kilometres, hopefully to tear up his teammate. But at the moment, one rider still on the front for Tinkoff Saxo, Chris Juul Jensen.
Marcus Burkhardt has done his job as well today. Last speed on before the bar closes at 20 kilometres to go. Thumbs up from Nikolai Mikhailov. I'm not sure he's got too much left in the tank there, Matt.
No, well, it was a nice little attack, but it was never really going to go anywhere. At least you can say it was the last man standing today.
An extra kilometre or two on that Fuga Pinarello longest breakaway cries. Juul Jensen, blowing, breathing, working hard. Guado just behind him as well. Vasil Kirienka on the right-hand side in the black is the man protecting the Australian Richie Port, riding for the British team Sky. The peloton are 20 kilometres from the finish.
And one of the other teams moving up on the left-hand side, Team Giant Alpecin. Look out for them in the black with the red flashes.
Lots of possibilities as to what might happen here. Lots of possibilities. And remember, we love to hear from you. What do you think's going to happen? Hashtag Home of Cycling on Twitter for all your contributions and even late questions to Matt Stevens as well. Inside 20 Ks. Break is done. The peloton, led by Manuel Boiro. And he can certainly put the pace on.
He certainly can. Already a race winner this year. Took a stage of the Circuit de la Sarthe, only lost it on the final stage, but a great time trialist, and he's put in some serious kilometres on the front already in this Giro.
We can see Alberto Contador in the pink, about 10 wheels back. Is this a situation that suits him and Tinkoff Saxo, getting rid of as many bodies as possible, or again, are they just trying to control the pace to make sure it isn't too fast and too strenuous for a man who is clearly suffering with pain with that problem with the left shoulder?
I think it's the latter. I think it's about keeping the pace high, making sure he's well positioned. What it does, it makes it difficult for riders to move up the outside. When you've got a good tempo going, but it's fast enough for riders to keep changing position, that's when it becomes very stressful. That's when it becomes dangerous, especially when you look at a couple of kilometres ago, Alberto Contador found himself dangerously near the back of the peloton, and that was possibly due to just the revolving nature. But if you keep the pace high, it makes it very, very difficult for riders to move up, and generally riders will hold their place. And in a minute, the roads actually get a little bit narrower as well, so it's important he keeps a good place, and it's also important he's got lots of teammates around him or just behind him should he lose a few places too. But at the moment, bobbing out of the saddle in that familiar style.
And here is Stefano Pirazzi on the right-hand side, getting into position, ready to attack. He's in the green and white for Bardiani. He comes from Fiuggi, today's Finnish town, and he promised that if he wasn't in the breakaway, he would attack today. So get ready for Stefano Pirazzi to fly off the front at some point. La Forma, and it's got a beautiful forma or shape from the air about it. Lots of little towns that look almost identical from the air here, as we see Ivan Basso in the centre of the screen, former double Giro d'Italia winner, riding in support for the man who's carrying the injury, Alberto Contador. Mick Rogers just in front of him, Roman Kreuziger just behind, Tosato second wheel, it's Boiro doing all the work at the minute for the team in the yellow and blue of Tinkoff Saxo. Now Russian registered team, they've been Danish for so long, all the way back in days when they were CSC as well, different sponsors have been involved. That's Kirienko for Team Sky.
It's actually Ivan Basso riding in second wheel at the moment. I think we're just going to be shortly coming to the top of this climb. There's a very short plateau. Bonen from Ethics Quickstep.
Count him out then today.
This just shows how hilly this is and how hard this little climb is. There's a very short plateau, but then, as well as keeping a good position on the climb, we've got a narrow, twisty descent before the road kicks up again. So equally as important as keeping a good position on the climb is keeping a good position on the descent as well.
Pirazzi still in the green on the wheel of Ricci Port there, just waiting. Does he have the legs to put in the promised attack? That's the question, certainly with the pace that's being put on. As Cerrone says hello to the Giro. All different ways of attracting the helicopter and the cameras to show you on the television. Usually some pink involved, not this time.
Usually some hay bales or some tractors.
Alexej Pataki. Alessandro Pataki, oldest rider in the race at 41. Little touch of shoulders with his mate there, Sacha Model, all nice and light-hearted.
I actually prefer their kit in white, and they should keep it that way. It was a little bit subdued, wasn't it, before?
Grey kit until now, Southeast, the brand new team. Oh, Heinrich Hausler towards the back. That's big news for the stage today. He was certainly, for one, was hoping to be there towards the end, to have a go and to try and win the stage. And remember, he's the second of the two sprinters in the YAM cycling team. Matteo Pelucchi for the flat, Heinrich Hausler for days like this, and that's not good news for the Swiss team.
Yeah, another rider, Caleb Fairley, just going out the back. That is a surprise. We heard from him at the start. He was actually quite upbeat about the stage today, and if you look at the roster, he was definitely the rider that this finish would have suited more, in fact, than Pelucchi, who finished a fine second place yesterday, but definitely not the day for Hausler.
Really good pressure being put on here by Tinkoff Saxo, riding for Alberto Contador. At the minute, they're doing the right job for him.
5 riders there from Astana as well. All sat just behind. So Alberto Contador riding third wheel at the moment. It's Ivan Basso on the front, setting that tempo. Roman Kreuziger sat on the wheel of his lead. Have a look at the position of his hands. It's still that hand, that left hander is towards the centre of the bars, indicating he's just trying to sort of keep it contained and not extend it too much. And there's Fabio Aru.
Fabio Aru second, 2 seconds away from Alberto Contador in the overall general classification. He's next to Richie Porte, who's 20 seconds behind. Francesco Gavazzi towards the front full southeast. A very, very fast finisher after a hard day as Mick Rogers, Ivan Basso and the pink jersey of Alberto Contador bring it up. Look at how much this is strung out. And remember, we've still got the final climb to go yet, which is, I think, we saw equivalent to 2 times the Poggio.
Yeah, it's 10.7 from the bottom of the first climb to the finish line for Yuji. It says 10.75 kilometers. It's a long drag. You've got about 4 kilometers at an average of 4.4%. Then there's a slight dip, but then it rolls for a section before the last kilometer drags up at an average of 4.4 kilometers. Sorry, 4.4%. Yeah, they haven't even got on that yet. So this is going to be a very, very tough one. I think Tinkoff Saxo want to make sure they get down this next descent before the final climb to the finish, and certainly at the moment Alberto Contador in a good position, sitting third.
There's Piglio in the distance. We're approaching Piglio right now as more riders are being dropped. This is the number 72 Arno Cortei hanging on at the back there as we see Alessandro Petacchi say goodbye to the peloton. He'll be one of the bosses in the gruppetto that comes in a little later on. Save the legs for another challenge to make the time limit tomorrow.
Well, on the flat stage, it's fair play to Petacchi, the oldest man in the race, 41 years of age. He's had 2 top 5 finishes, so he's going to be reasonably happy with that. And again, we'll look forward to another day. But look, still Tinkoff Saxo at the front, still Alberto Contador sat in pink in third position.
Michael Matthews still in here, and one thing to keep an eye on over this climb and the final climb that we're about to see, both of them are uncategorized, by the way, which whether he hangs on or whether Simon Gerrans is still there as well, and who is feeling the best amongst the two.
Yeah, I think you could think that this might suit Simon Gerrans more than Matthews, but Matthews can get over the climbs pretty well. As I say, not the purest of sprinters. He was up in the mix yesterday, but when Greipel really put the power down on the flat with the tailwind, that's when the difference lay. But I think this climb to the finish will suit Matthews, but again, given how long the day is, it could be either one of those. And Orica Green Edge, a well-represented number just in the centre of your screen there, in the white, blue with the yellow flashes.
Gerrans already worn the pink jersey on the very first day after the team time trial. Michael Matthews wore it the day after that. It's been passed around the team. Not too sure the pink jersey is going to change hands today.
You've got to think of Simon Clark. Simon Clark is riding really, really well. I mean, he finished 7th, I think, in the World Championships a couple of years back on a very, very hard parcours. Won a hilly stage of the Tour of Spain, and is sprinting very, very well too. So you can't rule out Clarkie. I think Orica Green Edge, I think on paper, have possibly the strongest group of riders should it come to a select group at the end.
Lots of cards to play. Sander Armé hanging on at the back in the red on the right-hand side wearing 101. Lars Yitting back, his teammate there with him as well. 113 is Igor Anton, a man for the high mountain. This is Ivan Basso. 24 minutes, 22 seconds down. It must be a strange sensation for him to be riding the Giro d'Italia again in this sort of capacity as a helper rather than the man with the pressure on him.
I think it must be a different sensation, but I think it's what he's comfortable in, because the last couple of years with Cannondale, and let's be fair, he's trod water for a couple of years with no real direction. His aspirations of getting up in the Grand Tours, I think, had passed, but now he's got a new sense of urgency, of focus, and has ridden so well already this year as a lieutenant. All the experience, and he still climbs very well. He won't be there necessarily at the finish, but he has a real clear role to play, and I think he's revelling in this opportunity in the latter part of his career.
Liberating for him, maybe?
I think so, yeah, definitely.
7 hours in the saddle, 15 Ks to go. It's been a long, slow day so far. Alberto Contador and his separated shoulder have got on just fine until now. They haven't. He's hidden it very, very well. They're riding towards the front of a peloton that has brought back a group of 4 that's been away for the majority of the day. It's going to be a fast finish, though. It's
going to be a very fast finish. It's a great split screen here, slightly speeded up version of Juan Antonio Flecha's ride to the finish line. So this on the right-hand side is what the riders face. In a moment, the road will swing to the left. There's the deviation that the team cars will take. Just past the van there, but this is a little kick up to the line. And there's the finish. 2 to
4% at stages as well. It's not an easy sprint finish before. And we've had select second-tier sprinters winning here previously. Fran Ventoso, the last of those for Spain and Movistar in 2011. The last time that the Giro d'Italia came to town.
to start.
Matteo Tosato, pardon me, Matt, on the left-hand side, just taking up at the front. And Tinkoff Saxo, let's have an update. Still looking comfortable for you?
They're still looking very comfortable. They've got men in number there. They've now got this technical descent to negotiate. Great shot there of the convoy. 1 or 2 riders spread over the side of the mountain as well. But again, important on the descent that Alberto Conto keeps in a good position.
That's the U-turn we mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's that U-turn. Yeah, it's again, thankfully, when we heard reports at the top of the show that it was going to be raining today, thankfully that isn't the case. It's dry, it's relatively safe, so Alberto Conto will be breathing a sigh of relief. But we'll just have to see how he goes at the finish. But at the moment, he looks relatively comfortable. But again, the screw not being turned too tight. I think what we have in the minute at the bottom of the descent, we then have a climb 4.4% for 5 kilometres, so a really steady climb. And as somebody kindly on Twitter posted, it's like going up the Poggio twice. So a great example of putting things in perspective there for us today.
Contador moving his right arm, his left arm, we haven't seen it move off the bars all day. That is the one with the shoulder injury. Radioing in there. Didn't look particularly worried. What will he be doing? Talking about his sensations and his feelings back to the car?
Definitely. His team, Lars Mikkelsen, will be speaking to Alberto almost constantly, just making sure he's okay, because if he starts to falter, they need to get a plan in operation. It might mean he drops back down the peloton. He'll have some riders there with him, and they'll look at just trying to usher him through the final parts of the stage. But just by looking at the way he's riding at the moment, he seems pretty good. We've seen him in and out of the saddle, although when he's riding on the tops, he's definitely feeling some pain. But again, he'll just be radioing in and saying, I'm fine, and reassuring the director sportifs, just so should he start to falter, they can make sure that the riders are there around him and looking after him as well. And also just offering him words of encouragement as well, just making him believe, not that he's a rider that does that. He's very focused, he does his own thing, he attacks when he wants to, but sometimes just the gentle word of the director in your ear, just to reassure you, also to tell you about the damage at the back. Hey, Alberto, you're riding really well, there's 40 guys out the back, and he goes, okay, well actually, Christ, I'm feeling pretty good. So just things like that, that's the kind of information that the director will be giving you.
Talking about the painkillers earlier that he'll be taking, of course, and he's limited in his choice given the rules with that, of course. Adrenaline surely plays a big factor as well.
Definitely. I mean, he's riding in the pink jersey. The excitement of a finish, although sometimes it's adrenaline you don't necessarily need, it does give you that bit of a spike. So adrenaline combined with some anti-inflammatories and some paracetamol, hey, it's a legal heady kind of cocktail, and added to the kind of drive and determination. He wants to get through this stage. I think this is we didn't know whether he was going to start. Fortunately for the race, for the team, for himself, he did start. Tomorrow's a different test, but the best thing to do in this sort of situation is take it day by day.
Last 10 kilometres or so, mostly uphill here. Descending is done. With the sort of injury he's got, what would be better in terms of pain and managing and controlling the bike, descent or ascent?
I think on the descent, and on a particularly twisty and technical descent, you're always on the brakes. And when you brake, although the brakes these days are very, very light, that they're using Shimano Dura-Ace, which are a remarkably light, responsive top-end brake, a little bit of modulation in there as well. Shouldn't be too bad. I think it's the climb. It's when he gets out of the saddle, and we all know, we've talked about it a lot now, Alberto Conto likes to ride out the saddle. That's the way he prefers to deliver power to the pedals, feels far more comfortable. And at this point in the race, when they're riding hard, that's the way he prefers to ride, and I think that's maybe putting a little bit of stress on his arm. But the fact is that he is still getting out of the saddle says to me that, although he's definitely feeling some pain, that it clearly is manageable at the moment.
There may have been riders dropped out the back, but I can still see Andre Greipel towards the front.
I can definitely see Andre Greipel there. I think other teams with interest of the finish here, BMC will be acutely aware that Greipel is still in the mix, and also will Orica Green Edge. Still a long way to go, bearing in mind for the next 5 kilometres we've got a gradient of 4.4k, so a significant climb, not too steep, but enough if the pace is high enough to put some sprinters into difficulty. But just look at the way Greipel rode the classics, you know, Tour of Flanders. He's ridden a really aggressive. You can't rule him out. It just depends on how hard they go at the front. If we see Orica or Astana, for example, although I don't think we'll necessarily see them doing it, it'll all depend on the pace. And the further we get up this climb, the more likelihood that Greipel will stay in the mix, because he'll then continually, as each kilometre passes, he'll think, actually, I'm going to believe I can really do this. So he'll just dig a little bit deeper and try and hold on, get over the top, because in 3 or 4 kilometre time it plateaus, it rolls for a bit before that final kick up to the line.
Looking at Acuto, another beautiful town just perched on the hillsides around here. As Fuji is where we're headed today. In the meantime, Tinkoff Saxo continuing their excellent job, as Matteo Tosato says. That's that for the day. He peels off. Astana and Team Sky for Fabio Aru and Richie Porte. Will they be just content to sit on this and wait and save their energy until tomorrow to the real madness stage?
I think they will. I think if we see any attacks, it'll be from riders who are looking for the stage win. I think we could see riders from Movistar attack, Bardiani. We know the rider Pirazzi. I think we might see him attack, but I don't think we'll see riders from Astana or Sky attack. They may do, but from my perspective, I think we'll just see them sit in the pace, sit in the wheels for the time being. And it is a pretty fast pace that's being set by Ivan Basso presently.
A strange sight to see Igor Anton dropped on a climb such as this. I can only feel he's not feeling at his best. Former winner of Monte Zoncolan as well, Igor Anton, former Euskaltel-Euskadi man. No longer dressed in orange, a man in the navy of Movistar. We're inside the last 10 kilometres of what has been the longest stage of this 2015 Giro d'Italia. Alberto Contador started, despite the doubts overnight about his condition and his dislocated shoulder. Looks to be getting on just fine for the minute. Calm again in the peloton after some serious paces. Shed quite a few riders. You've seen many of the sprinters go. Andre Greipel remains in this group as Tosata goes. Just says hello to Igor Anton on his way down. Orica Green Edge still there, BMC still there. A lot of guys. It's a really open stage, this, with lots of possibilities, Matt.
It is. We thought this would get whittled down. There's, I mean, I think about half the peloton. It looks like there's about 70 or 80 riders. It just depends which team takes it up. The reason Tinkoff Saxo is setting this pace is because this is a pace that Alberto Contador is happy with. Okay, he might be in pain, but this is a pace that he can sustain. What he doesn't want is for the pace to be staccato style, where riders attack, surge off at a pace that's very difficult to follow, then slowing again. What he wants is a rhythm. He wants a pace that he can settle into and control. That's why we're seeing Basso, and we're also seeing Mick Rogers at the front.
Gilbert wearing 41, just on the wheel of the number 88, who is Sebastian Reichenbach. This is the leader of the race, Alberto Contador. So much attention, so much focus on this man. He didn't want it to be raining, he didn't want to be reaching for rain jackets and food all day. He's been well looked after, and he has to do the last bit himself here with his team.
He does. He's got Roman Kreuzer sat on his wheel, and again, the face of a rider gives so much away. Some riders do have the ability to have a mask despite the turmoil, the inner turmoil that's going on. But at the moment, Contador, when he gets out of the saddle, although his left arm is flexing ever so subtly, differently than normally, just looking at his face, there's no wincing. He looks to be breathing very well. Certainly physiologically, in terms of the effort and the power, he seems fine. It's just we don't know deep inside how much that arm is troubling. But at the moment, he seems to be okay.
Fabio Aru, second place overall, the best young rider thus far. It's been a really good week, first week so far for the man from Astana who came into this race under such a cloud. Andre Greipel, perhaps just being shed back a little here now. Luca Paolini on the left-hand side, left for Katusha. Kevin Reza there as well. A few guys who perhaps were hoping to be involved towards the end, but the high pace, making sure that they're way down in the group at the minute. But the important thing is they're just about still in the group.
They are, but did you notice Greipel wasn't on his own? He had about four, where I could see Lotto teammates around him. So even if Greipel gets distance over the top, there could actually be a plan. Sometimes, as soon as you can see the top, you can actually think to yourself, OK, there's a plateau. I can afford to not go into the red, lose 20 or 30 metres, have some teammates around me who won't panic, who just gently pace me back on. Greipel's digging in. He's got the team around him. He's looking good at the moment. Still about 2 or 3 kilometres of climbing before the plateau and the kick up to the finish. So still a couple of kilometres of hard riding just yet.
Tinkoff Saxo riding a good race here. Ivan Basso still with the pace on and still shedding bodies. Mick Rogers still behind him. Roman Kreuzer, the last man, just behind the pink jersey of Alberto Contador there. Astana have 5 men around Fabio Aru. Sky have 6 to the front as well. And in the hardest stage we've seen so far, it's the best number of Sky riders we've seen for Richie Porte.
Yeah, I think that the last of their number was Heinau. He has had a couple of very difficult days, but he's in the mix too. So is Mikel Nieves. Sitsu's also there.
Greipel still at the back. It's a very slightly different red to that of his teammates. Luca Paolini on the left-hand side wearing 171, and Lotto Sudol, as Matt Stevens was just describing, having most of their team surrounding their main sprint man.
Yeah, the last man in that group is Greg Henderson. What a lead out he did yesterday. Took it up from 600 metres to go before launching Greipel to the finish. Made advantage of that tailwind finish, but a completely different proposition to the finish today. All about surviving, seeing if they can get their man to the line. But really good to see a pure sprinter trying to hang on in this difficult finale.
Rogers and Basso deterring attacks here with 7 kilometres to go.
It is. It's keeping a pace even, constant, very hard. But this is a pace that Constant will be happy with, and it means he doesn't have to get in and out of the saddle and try and respond to those sharp accelerations and decelerations, which is always very, very difficult. Davide Formolo also in the mix there. Could just see that bright green, very distinctive POC helmet. Good to see him in the mix.
It's interesting because we saw Cannondale Garmin come to the front en masse a long time ago, but where are all the riders now? Almost all of them have disappeared. There's one or two down towards the base of the group. Formolo, more or less all on his own towards the front, though. Yeah, I'm trying to pick out some of the riders. There's still quite a few riders in there. I think there's about 4 or 5 riders. Huysdale looks like Slagter is also in the mix there. So they do have about 6 or 7 riders still in the mix, but well spread over that group. Yeah, only one in the front half of the peloton, which is Formolo. Nobody even around to try and look after the young man. Surprising, really. I think just shows how hard this pace is. It's a constant pace. It is a very difficult one. Rogers now swinging off to put Basso on the front. Basso has done some amazing long turns, but look at the gear he's turning as well. Although this is a 4.4% graded, he's riding on the big ring quite a long way down the block. So just showing the amount of power that they're putting out. Constantly now, not often we see him on the drops on a climb. That just shows you what it, well, how quick they're climbing this climb. Oscar Gatto still there for Androni. A couple of riders for Bardiani. Now we see Cannondale Garmin coming to the front. That's Ryder Huysdale. Looks like he's got Slagter on his wheel. Jelter Slagter doesn't have a great season so far, but are moving up the outside. And again, this is a finish that could suit him. All about timing. Etix Quickstep as well, bringing Rigoberto Urán to the fore. 33 kilometers per hour up this uphill. The final climb of the day gets a little easier towards the end before that final kick inside the last kilometre again. Yeah, in about a kilometre's time, 1,500 metres time, they go on a plateau, still gently rising, but nowhere near the sort of gradient at the moment before that 800, 900 metre kick to the line. Just under 6 kilometres for Mick Rogers, Ivan Basso, and race leader Alberto Contador at the front there in the Tinkoff Saxo and race leaders' colours respectively. This is all that's left of the peloton. It's been a long day. 4 riders went out earlier on. De Negri, Bandiera, Bohem, Mihailov couldn't stay there. We didn't think they were going to stay there today. The longest stage of the Giro d'Italia, well over 260 kilometres. It's like watching a monument classic, this, without most of the climbs. This final climb, 2 times the length of the Poggio, if you're looking and thinking about monuments. Great Milan-San Remo race. Now, this is the tunnel. Lasts for around 700 metres. It's uphill inside, though. By the time we come out of it, we're approaching the final fight for the stage. This is when most of the riders you'd like to think are going to take off their sunglasses, because it's amazing. They've got these very dark sunglasses on, and suddenly things go very dark, as you can see. Although it's partially lit, pretty dark in there. Can be quite a strange experience going through a tunnel as a peloton. And there is a small illustration of, one, how wide the road is there, 2, the different road surface. You can see the cracks all the way down as well, and 3, the difference in light, as you were just describing that. Exactly. Well, one thing that we can see here, all the motorbikes and the cars, they have the light shining in front of you. But when you're midway through the peloton, you don't have the advantage of the headlights of the cars and the motorbikes. Directly in front of you is complete shade, so what you can't see are any potholes and I don't know, and divots in the road. Fortunately, it looks like the road's relatively smooth. There is some markings on the centre there in the tarmac, but I've been down potholes and with it, you just don't know they're there. I mean, it is quite an unnerving situation, but it looks to be, you know, a reasonable amount of light in there, but it is very, very different, especially in the first few moments. You've got it bright outside and then very dark inside. Good work through the tunnel from Tinkoff Saxo. Looks as though, touch wood, everybody's come through unscathed. Didn't see any commotion or any incident in there. That's nice to see, certainly after the chaos we saw yesterday. And it's Ivan Basso once more in his particular style, hunched over the handlebars. We're about to go over a little lip, a very small descent, before it's up and down to the final kilometre. Yes, indeed. This is a
I don't think any more riders at the present time are going to get dropped. There's probably around 70, maybe even 80 riders there, so a relatively big group. Interesting to see if Andre Greipel has made it. He was certainly fighting valiantly, well supported by his Lotto Soudal teammates, but I'd say gently undulates.
He's on the right-hand side, pardon me, Matt, just being brought up to the front there. He's got a man in red in front of him, the Lotto Soudal kit. If you look on the left, you will see Andre Greipel just being brought into the first 30 riders in this group. With 4Ks to go, if Greipel can survive the final kilometre, it really is game on for the sprinters.
I think what we have to say now, this isn't a truce. Tinkoff Saxo set a pace that has dropped half of the peloton. This certainly isn't a truce today. That would have been a very, very difficult tempo to accelerate off, and it has actually deterred in the attack so far. 3.6 kilometres to go. What a fantastic team performance by Tinkoff Saxo. But who's going to win on the day? Team Sky now moving up the left-hand side.
Yeah, the race is definitely on here. Another thing you can't do is say, don't attack us, there's nothing happening today, and then set that pace.
This is open season. They've basically made a selection. The winner will come from this group of riders now. Anybody else is way, way down the back.
Kirienka takes over for Team Sky. Second wheel is Richie Porte, the leader of Team Sky. Third overall at 20 seconds on his wheel. A couple of wheels further back, you can see Alberto Contador, and Kirienka is grinding a huge gear here.
It looks to me as if he's in either 53.11 or 53.12, just churning it. We saw him at the front. He's got that remarkably still style, very low at the front, but makes it look almost effortless. And as you see the other train on the left-hand side really struggling to keep a pace with him.
Lotto Soudal yesterday did one of the best lead-outs and the best plans executed to perfection that I've seen in recent stages. Greg Henderson was a big part of that, of course, with his lead-out. I know he's upset a few people on Twitter recently and what have you with his statements about Fabio Aru, but on the bike he did a fantastic job yesterday, and it was a plan that had to be congratulated for being carried out to absolute perfection.
And it was, I mean, that they planned it. They had a meeting before the race. That Hansen played a big part too. And interestingly, Hansen is also, it's a Hansen who took it up from 1.1 Ks to 600 yesterday, still there. Also is Greg Henderson, but it's a different sort of finish. It has a climb in it. It rises all the way to the line. But again, if they put him in a good position, who knows?
Tom Slagter's there for Canadel Garmin as well. Brought up into position. I take it all back. Very, very good plan again, well executed. They calculated well, they took the risk of perhaps being dropped and losing a few wheels at the back, but they brought their riders to the front. CCC coming to the front as well. Going to be interesting to know if Gregor Bola is still there.
It does look like it is actually Gregor Bola. Looks like he's got Petersky with him, so he's a very, very fast finisher indeed. But 3 trains for the first time now hitting the front, or before the base of the climb. We have Orica Green Edge moving up on the right-hand side.
BMC trying to get organised as well, but not quite finding their leader, Philippe Gilbert, at the minute anywhere near to the front. And Orica Green Edge on the left-hand side with Michael Matthews still there, as is Simon Gerrans at the back of this at the minute.
Well, Greg Henderson has taken this up very, very early indeed. He's got Adam Hansen on his wheel. A reversal of yesterday. Andre Greipel fighting to hold the wheel. Look at the grimace on the face of the German. Remember, he's in the red jersey. He's currently wearing the points leaders jersey in this race.
Lampre coming up as well. Looks as though Sacha Modolo survives. So at the minute, as it stands, unless there are late attacks, it will be a sprint of sorts. Orica Green Edge well placed. Lotto Soudal with Andre Greipel, who won the stage yesterday as well. BMC struggling to keep pace. And look at this from Peter Veining. What pace on the front as we're approaching the final kilometre.
Peter Veining is on the front. Michael Matthews in third wheel. Then we have Simon Gerrans. So will Matthews lead out Gerrans? A very interesting formation. But look at the speed by Peter Veining. They go into the kilometre to go flag.
Kilometre to go, and Lampre Merida being brought up on the right-hand side. Sacha Modolo going for them. Gregor Bola, it is in the orange, the Slovenian man. He loves a finish like this, as also Bardiani involved with Enrico Battaglin. How they would dearly love to win the stage. They are sponsored by Fuji Mineral Water. It's Lampre Merida now leading it out right through the middle as the road kicks up, remember here. Michael Matthews looks to be acting as lead-out man for Simon Gerrans today in a role reversal for Orica Green Edge. A plan there, but also a plan for Sacha Modolo, who are taking it up with Lampre really well. Who's going to survive the climb here? 400 metres to go. It's going to be a funny sprint, a strange sprint. How's it going to go as Lotto Soudal has lost contact? It won't be a day for Andre Greipel. Lampre through the middle. Gerrans trying to find the right wheel as Michael Matthews' job is done with 300 metres to go. Modolo looking to launch it. Gavazzi is there as well for Southeast, as is Balletti, it seems. Through the middle, and here we go. Fellini on the left-hand side, on the right, Deutsch Movi starts. Modolo, though, who has the strength. Modolo coming through the centre, and Lampre will is Sacha Modolo. Or it isn't, pardon me, it's Diego Lisi who's come off the back. Diego Lisi who's taken the win. Lampre with a great job overall. Ulisi, who had all those problems last year, he was suspended after the Giro d'Italia where he won 2 stages. And my oh my, if Ulisi has outsprinted the guys he's outsprinted, that is a mighty win.
That's a fantastic win by Diego Ulisi. Lobato came up very late for Movistar, but Simon Gerrans was also very close. But what an interesting sprint that was. Very laboured, almost a grind to the line rather than one for the pure sprinters. Surprisingly, we didn't see Philippe Gilbert in the mix, just a little bit too hard for him today. But Diego Lisi, perfect lead out by his teammates though. But a big surprise.
Wow. He surprised us all there, has Diego Lisi. Everybody looking around. In the company he was keeping, the likes of Gerrans and Matthews. OK, Dreipel was dropped. We had Belletti having a go. Gavazzi was up there as well. Bardiani with Battaglin too. But Diego Lisi, look what it means to him.
Yeah, rather cathartic win there for Ulisi.
And he's hugging Sacha Modolo. Sacha Modolo up there with him. Lampre with a great team effort. Przemysław Niemiec there. That's 2 stage wins for them. They had their own plan today. They must have decided to change that plan. And Diego Lisi has picked up a wonderful win.
Well, they took it up. I mean, going into that final left-hander, to be fair, Lampre Merida rode a very good race indeed. But so did Orica Greenedge. There you go. Lobato confirmed as 2nd place.
Ulisi up there with Lobato in 2nd place. Simon Gerrans third, Belletti, Battaglin, Cobrelli, Felline, Bolla, Reza and Lagoutin. All the glory. Huge surprise, Diego Lisi. Diego Lisi shocks everybody. That is a mighty win. You would have not picked that man to outsprint that group on most days. It comes after 264 grueling kilometres and almost 7.5 hours. Diego Lisi there to take the win on stage 7 of the Giro d'Italia.
Welcome back to Giro Extra live on Eurosport, where you've just seen Diego Ulisi win his 3rd Giro d'Italia stage. And tell us, Juan Antonio, what did he do so well right at the end up on the inside?
I think Diego Ulisi waited. He waited because all the guys that went too early. It was very tough. We could see also Juan José Lobato from Movistar. Lobato did it great, but of course Ulisi did it way better because he waited a bit longer. He's greater climber than Lobato, and a fast guy. Ulisi is also a very fast guy.
And another Italian winner, of course, Diego Ulisi, just back from suspension too. But it's making this Giro quite a good one for Lampre Merida.
Yeah, they already won 2 stages. We had the interview of Poland yesterday also with the blue leading the mountain jersey. So Lampre Merida is doing an amazing Giro so far. We haven't done many stages first week and 2 victories. It's very good for them.
How did Lampre Merida use their team today in order to get Ulisi into the right position? Did they do the work themselves or did they rely on others' work?
I still have my doubts. I think that they were trying to lead Sacha Modolo out, but I think Sacha Modolo, he couldn't follow the wheel of his teammate, and Ulisi was around there. He saw that, and Ulisi just did his own sprint, but the team was organized. The team was very well organized right after Orica, because Orica was doing a really good lead-out train as well, but probably too early, because remember we mentioned that in the morning that was around 600 meters to go when the climb was going a little bit steeper, and from there was flattening out a little bit, but was around 600 meters when Orica was already there, but probably too early.
Let's think now about Alberto Contador's day. Tinkoff Saxo didn't stay back. They were at the front in the last 20 kilometers, certainly. How did you see Alberto riding today?
Well, in my opinion, Alberto was looking great. Actually, probably he suffered a lot today. But I think as soon as they started to get through the stage and warm up, and it's been good weather, but not too warm, so a bit cooler than the other days. I think even their teammates, I mean, Tinkoff, as soon as I realized that Alberto was doing great, that motivated them a lot, and that's probably the reason why they also rode in my opinion, and a little bit too hard, because we saw a fantastic, amazing Ivan Basso, Mick Rogers, and I think it was because they got, again, a little bit too excited. But this time, because of the reason that Alberto was looking better than expected, probably not that good as he was before the crash.
We saw, again, several occasions, Tinkoff, Saxo, Astana and Team Sky on the front of the peloton. Where is it for you? Did anything happen today in terms of those teams? Was there any strength or weakness that you noticed today?
Well, it's hard to evaluate today, but I mean, I think such long stages in the Giro, they've been fine for trying to win the breakaway, but riders take a little bit easy, and at the end it was still hard. But I mean, I'm glad to see more numbers of Sky. So let's say today I've seen like more equal of strength in between the teams. So that's what happened in Grand Tours. It doesn't mean that one day you see a team with more guys in the front that's going to happen every day. Like today we saw Sky, a stronger Sky than we've been used to see.
Great, thank you, Juan Antonio. The stage was so long today that Giro Extra is shortened for the moment, but the GC classification hasn't changed, and in a few moments' time we will see Alberto Contador up on the podium. Juan Antonio, thank you very much again, and of course we'll see you again tomorrow with a really, really interesting stage on Saturday for stage 8 of this 98 Giro d'Italia. See you tomorrow.
Oh, what a win, what a comeback from Diego Lisi. Absolutely unbelievable that he's managed to do that there. A super win from the man who won 2 stages last year, but was then banned for a positive test. Fiuggi to Campitello Matese tomorrow. It's the big one. Tomorrow live from 1:30 Central European time. That is in Central Europe. If you're watching in the UK, Republic of Ireland, it's 12:30 on Eurosport. Fiuggi to Campitello Matese. It's the mountains. Don't miss it. 186 k's from Matt and me, Rob. We'll see you tomorrow.